This is going to be the first episode of this Ark Survival Evolved playthrough. Now, let's go over some rules of how I'm going to be playing this server. First things first, it's basically going to be a primal / tribal playthrough, which means no guns, no tech gear, no fabricator. Some of the gear that is made in the smithy is going to be on a case-by-case basis, but in general, I'm not going to go modern. It's going to be primarily primal gear only. Now, I do have some mods that are going to be active during this playthrough. One of them is the Ark additions. Pretty much all of them are going to be active. I also have the exotic animals from RP Star, which means I'm going to have a lot of creatures from the Atlas game present. There are also some weapon mods that I added to help give a little bit more weapon variety for the primitive theme. However, they don't really work, and you'll see why later on in this video. And now for myself, I do have some server settings that are going to be different. Now, primarily all of my server settings are going to be default rates. However, I do have ×3 harvest to make it a little bit easier for a solo player. I will have fast taming, as this server is not one that I could just leave on running. I do have to log off at some point, so faster taming is beneficial for a solo player. And there's also fast experience gains, though that won't really help me because I still need to grind, farm, and build all of the stuff that I need to survive, so being able to have access to something at a certain level is still not really going to help me as much. So that's really what we're looking at for this playthrough. Now we create my character. This is Ursius. He's basically my tribal OC character that I make in every video game I ever play, really. And now we have to launch him into the server. Now, this is the Appalachian map. This is a $3 roughly paid premium map for Ark Ascended. As you see, the northern and the farther reaches are going to be the harder zones. The majority of it is pretty much in the yellow or medium, while the southern shores are easy. I go ahead and select one of the easier realms because I don't know how hard this map is going to be, and I launch myself into the server. Now that I'm in the map, I look around, get my bearings, and see what is around me. With the exception of a couple of dodos, I find a cat. This is one of the creatures that is added from one of the exotic animal mods, and I just have to tame it. So first thing I do is I kill a dodo to get some meat. I slowly crawl towards the cat and try to tame it. It does take a little while, but eventually I do tame the cat. And I name him Bartholomew, and he is going to be my companion throughout this trip. The mod that adds all of the extra primal weapons adds in this station here, the Primal Station, which allows you to create all these new exotic weapons. But unfortunately, I need a Alpha Raptor Claw in order to make it. Oh well, so I start grinding. I need to prepare myself and get to building a house for me and Bartholomew. After all, he's just a little kitty. He needs protection from the elements. Eventually I started to get hungry, so I had to make a campfire in order to feed myself, though I realized besides some berries I had on me, I didn't really have any meat. I used all of it to feed Bartholomew earlier, so it's time to go hunting. Now, to be more effective at hunting, I look and find a stone spear. This is one of the primal tools from the mod that I added. It's gonna need a lot of resources, but I go ahead and farm the materials anyway, and when I go to use it, well, look for yourself. Yeah, so it puts me in a T-pose, and it absolutely sucks. I mean, okay, maybe it just puts you in the T-pose when you're just in third person. Maybe you could still use it in first person. So that's what I go to do. I go to try to find a dodo or something that I could fight so I can see how well this spear actually works. Well, unfortunately, not only is the animation absolutely fucked, but when you go to use it, it uses so much energy that after 3 or 4 strikes of using it, it puts me in a torpor state. Needless to say, I threw that spear away and never touched it again. After throwing out that modded spear, I bring forth the good old-fashioned spear that you get in the default Ark. And I continue to farm resources, hunt creatures for hide and meat, and eventually I go out and start exploring the surrounding areas. Now, this map does feature several biomes all throughout the map, including various types of boreal forests. There are meadows, grasslands, and even a badlands up in the northern west corner. Of course, you have small amount of tundra, icebergs, and generally colder areas in this map, though you'll see more of it later on as we explore. For right now, you're going to see a lot of more tropical and temperate forests. While exploring up the river, I notice a Carnotaur on the other side. Now, I am not nearly geared enough in order to take on a Carno, so I turn around and head towards the ocean. You will notice that the water graphics are a bit weird. I'm not sure if that's the map or if that's just my computer, but I don't remember ever seeing this on the island map, so I'm thinking it's more or less the map itself and not my computer. Either way, you'll also notice that there's not a lot of creatures around. Now, that's something I did. I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video that I do have the creature spawn rate reduced by 50%. The reason is when I was doing my aberration playthrough, there were just tons of spawns everywhere. Like, it was so condensed, I couldn't take a step without being mauled by just anything. I felt like there were parasaurs everywhere, bears everywhere, so I turned it down by 50% and forgot to change it for this playthrough. Now, I did turn it up a little bit as it was a little bit too barren for my liking, but you'll see later on there are plenty of creatures to find at around 60%, so that's not going to be an issue later on. I eventually, as I followed the ocean line, found a snow biome. Now, I couldn't quite enter it just yet as there was a blizzard going on, so it was a bit too cold for me to enter without dying. So I decided, you know what, I think I'm going to settle here. And now I have a new goal. I am going to build up and move all of my dinosaurs and belongings to this snow biome where I will settle down permanently. Though on the way home, while thinking about my glorious adventure, I decided to try to take on a Dilo. He had a friend, no problem. So I start fighting both Dilos at the same time with my trusty spear and axe, only to then just get mauled by a terror bird that came out of the blue. So yeah, I respawned back at home and Bartholomew was not impressed. After a little bit more grinding, I make myself bow and arrows, so then I can go explore more, and I hunted a little bit of dodo on the way to get some meat and hide in order to keep crafting. On my last few adventures out, I headed east along the river and the ocean. This time I decided to head northwest and see what this other area had to offer. This is where I found an Ulfend, I believe it's called. This is a creature from one of the mods that I installed, and it's also from the Atlas game. Now, I'm not quite familiar with it because I didn't really play Atlas and it looks ugly as hell, so I decided to try to hunt it. Now, shooting it with the arrow didn't seem to do a lot of damage, but no worry, I had a lot of arrows, though I kept missing every single time. Eventually, at some point, I decided to use the bola that I had created, only to find out that it cannot be used on this creature. So after about several minutes of me trying to kill it, it ran off and I decided to just keep going as I ran out of arrows. Though I did find something to hunt anyway in order to get some more hide to keep crafting. I also noticed up on the hill nearby where I was hunting that Ulfend or whatever it's called, there is a ton of obsidian, and that's going to be a theme on this map. In various areas, you're going to find tons and tons of oil, of obsidian, of metal, pretty much anything you can think of. This map has an abundance of every resource, though in various areas you're not going to find as many, though in other areas it's nothing but. Shortly after, I got ganked by a pack of raptors. Yeah, that was pretty fun. Anyway, I made my way back, gathered my stuff, and I decided I was gonna head home. Though I took a little bit of a detour as, for one, I got lost, and two, just the scenery was very pretty. Like I said, there are many biomes in this map, and all of them are beautiful, at least from the ones that I've seen in my playthrough so far. Anyway, I jumped down the cliff, only to find a really cool looking forest. It was almost like magical, especially with the few trees that are scattered around there that are different than the other ones, like the one you kind of see there in the footage that's kind of illuminated by the light. Anyway, I turned around to see one of the deer creatures. I don't quite remember what it's called. All I know is that the generic term is called the Irish elk. Anyway, I decided now is the time to get my primal hunting on. So I stalk up on it, use my bola, and shoot it down. My first real kill of my primal playthrough. At least, you know, that wasn't a dodo. With the meat and hide in hand, I turned to try to head back home, through the forest and soon to be a small jungle along the riverside. I get my shit stolen by a Pego, which is every new player's worst nightmare and frustration. I hate these little shits so much. I wish they were never added into the game. Eventually, I do make my way back home, and I gather up a few things and head right back out, because I really need to start taming some creatures. So, my first logical step is to tame a Parasaur. Now, I don't have any trank arrows or even a slingshot, all I have is a club and a bola. So I figured, okay, let's try it. I go ahead and bola the Parasaur and try to knock it out with the club, though that didn't seem to work as it did absolutely nothing to the Parasaur, though I noticed that the Parasaur had a child. Now in Ark Ascension, if you kill the adult, you can then tame the baby for free. You just have to raise it up before you can use it. So I then start to chase the Parasaur all over, trying to kill it, and goddamn, it just would not go down without a fight. It kept running, I kept chasing, it kept going into the ocean, I swam after it, and eventually, after like 10 minutes of chasing it, making sure the baby was still following, which it was at the time, I eventually killed the goddamn Parasaur, only to then turn around and find out that the baby is no longer in sight. I looked for another 10 minutes or so looking all over for this baby, and I could not find it. So yeah, I ended up having to go home empty-handed and disappoint Bartholomew once again. It's been now several days since I started my adventure, and not a single tame to my name. Well, I guess it's gonna be a little bit longer than I expected before I move to the snow biome for good. So, that means I'm gonna have to build a little temporary base. Now, I don't want to build anything too extravagant, and I want to kind of keep in line with this more primitive theme. So, I was gonna build a teepee out of thatch. You can build a teepee very easy by using the triangle pieces, which are a new addition to Ark Survival Evolved. Well, rather, Ark Survival Ascended, haha. Anyway, I make myself a little teepee, and I try to put my bed on the inside, but I guess it was blocking the spawning, so I put one foundation on the outside and put my bed there, just pretend it's inside. I gather up Bartholomew, we both go inside of our little teepee and enjoy the sunset together. We last left off with my little teepee and Bartholomew looking out into the night sky. However, that didn't last long as I heard noises just outside. As I investigated, I saw a little Dilo just walking around. Well, I have to protect my little cat, right? So I started attacking the invader. It did ink me once, which is fine, I killed it really quick, and then I saw it had a baby, so I went to go tame it. Though, don't get too attached to it because it ended up starving because it was eating all the food and I had no more food to give. Well, since the day before, I ended up empty-handed when it came to tames, as that Parasaur didn't work out so well, I went back out to try to find something else to tame. I ended up finding another one of those Ulfens, I guess that's how you say it, and I saw it had a baby. This is perfect. Since the last one was really hard to even kill, I figured, hey, if I hit the baby, it'll come to me instead of me chasing it. After killing it, I then tamed the baby. Perfect, now I have a mount. I just have to wait for it to grow up and make a saddle, though luckily the saddle is made at a low level, so it shouldn't take that long at all. I named the little guy Ulf, because he's an Ulfen, get it? Anyway, I'm not creative with names. On the way home, I tried to swim across a little channel because I was kind of like right across the river from where I tamed it, and I did spot one shark. Luckily, it was one shark and he was just out of view. He kept spawning in and out of my view distance, so I made sure to keep him that far away and quickly headed to the other side. Little Ulf grew up, I made his saddle, and he became my first mount. Now we can actually go out and explore much farther areas because I'm not having to go on foot anymore. Also, did I mention that these things are derpy as fuck? Because they are, and I still hate them, but, you know, what can you do? Can't be too picky when you can't tame a Parasaur. With that being said, I do need to get more tames, so we headed out on Ulf to look for new creatures to tame. And look at that, a Carnosaur. Well, now that I have a mount, I'm gonna try kite taming it, which basically means because it is slow enough, it won't really catch up to me while I'm on a mount. so I will run a little bit of a distance, hit it with a trank arrow, and rinse and repeat. I'll keep running from it as it chases up, move when I need to, and hopefully eventually it will go down and I can tame it. It did take a while because it ends up this was a little bit of a higher level tame Carno, not completely max level tame, but more in the mid. I think he was level 60 if I remember correctly. Either way, eventually he does go down and I can tame him properly. Since he was going to take a while to tame, I decided to just hop back on Ulf and go explore the nearby areas, while staying relatively close so I don't lose sight of the Carnotaur. Anyway, I did find a star giraffe, or rather just a giraffe. This is one of the modded creatures from the StarExoticAnimals, I believe it was, as I have star animals and I also have farm animals, but I haven't seen any of the farm animals just yet. Either way, the star giraffe is absolutely massive. It towers over me, including my Ulf, which already towers over me. But anyway, I looked around, I saw a Diplodocus and a few other creatures, but I ended up heading back to the Carnotaur to check up on him and make sure he was taming good. Eventually, he did tame up, and I named him Arno, because, again, I am very creative with names. So, Arno the Carno decided to join us on our adventure as we continued exploring. And as I did explore up the river farther from my base, I eventually found a, abandoned settlement, or a fort, or something. I don't know, but I decided to look around inside. It's actually really cool because each of the buildings, they are considered homes. I don't know if they're considered, placed foundations where you could place beds or anything inside of them, but the structure itself does provide the home buff, which means I bet if other players did play on this server, or if there were tribes of players, they could move in and live in some of these settlements and build it up. I think that would be a really cool roleplay idea, but anyway, after dropping Arno back home, I went back out to keep exploring, and I saw a deer. Well, I have to hunt the deer on mounted back after all, so I chase after it. I didn't quite get it, as halfway through my hunting, I get knocked off by a fucking Microraptor. These little shits, they keep knocking me off my mounts. Luckily, Ulf is loyal and he fends off the Microraptors. I hop back on to try to look for the deer, only to then get attacked by a freaking terror bird, and I kill that son of a bitch and tame its baby. Well, now I've got a pet terror bird. Though nearby, I found the scene of a fight. Now that was there before I started hunting the deer, but only now did I start to look at it. It looked like a T-Rex had fought off one of the spiky boys. I don't actually know how to pronounce its name, but anyway, it looked like they had killed each other and laid there in mortal conflict. I took what I could from them, and I continued on my journey. With the farm animal mods that I added, sometimes you get what are called rainbow creatures, and I don't quite like them that much. You see how it changes color like there? It looks really cool, but it's not aesthetically pleasing to me, so I'm not going to be taming anything like this, but I just wanted to show it off real quick with this chicken that I found, which is a rainbow chicken. You'll probably see it with some other creatures too, but we instead want to tame the star creatures, as those are the ones with the natural colors. On the way back home, I found a dire bear. I killed it and saw that it had 2 babies. Perfect opportunity, so I ran after and managed to tame both of them. I named them both Ursoc and Ursol respectively. If you know where it's from, please let me know in the comments below. After dropping the bears back home to grow up, I went back out exploring, but this time I headed up north to the snow biome that I found before. I figured, well, if the blizzard is over, maybe it won't be as cold and I can explore a little bit of it. Sure enough, I was correct, and I was able to explore further. I found that there's tons of crystal, and you'll find out later that there's tons of metal nodes all throughout this biome. Going up one of the paths, I found one of the few tundra areas of the map. It was filled with mammoths, and I looked at it and said, this is going to be a perfect hunting ground for my little tribal roleplay that I planned on doing. Anyway, I kept continuing on to look for a place to live. Shortly away from the river that I crossed, I found a neat little pond. It was beautiful, had tons of cliffs nearby for protection, a water source, and it just frankly looked beautiful. I figured, this is it. This is where I'm going to be setting up my home. So now I need to go get all of my creatures and my stuff and bring them back to this location. But first, I decided to explore the nearby area. Not too far away from that little pond, I found a dire wolf. And just like the bears before, I killed the parent and tamed the baby. I had to wait for him to grow up before I could take him back home, so I sat throughout the night. I built a campfire to keep the cold away, and I just kind of chilled and went AFK for a little while. After coming back from being AFK, I decided to actually look at what the direwolves had dropped. One of them dropped a metal pickaxe, which is going to be very useful in getting my first little bit of metal to progress once I make the move over. Not too much longer later, the wolf finally grew up, and thankfully, they do not need a saddle, so I managed to hop on it and began my trip home, with Ulf following behind me. Ulf is much faster than the wolf, but that made it okay. I didn't have to really wait around for him. I could go at maximum speed for the wolf, while Ulf stayed close behind. I practiced more with hunting on mounted back, as I saw a couple of deer on the way home, though this time it was much more successful than the last couple of attempts. But now came the most annoying part. I had to pack up, put it all on my creatures, and begin the caravan over to the northern area. I grabbed everything out of my chest, I distributed it among my various creatures so they all shared a little bit of the weight. I picked up what I could from my TP, which is mainly the pestle and mortar, as I couldn't pick up the bed. I think it was damaged at some point from a creature that attacked, but it's fine. Beds are easy to make anyway. And don't worry, I did remember to pick up Bartholomew. And now was the time to start the perilous journey. Now, I did cut out a lot of this journey as I ended up taking a wrong turn along a riverside, led me up into the middle of the continent, so I had to swing back around, and it was just a nightmare. So I spared you that details, gave you the TLDR. Eventually, I did make it back to the river that was bordering the snow biome. I crossed over it, no problem, luckily no sharks or piranhas, and I made my way to the pond that was shortly after, and began settling down all of the creatures so I could start building. I hopped on Ulf, used him to clear out all of the brush as well as gather lumber and thatch so I could start building. I wanted to build my hut mostly out of wood, though I did give it a stone foundation as there was a lot of stone in the area that I had to clear out, so I wanted to use it for something. So with a stone foundation and a wooden wall with a thatch roof, I began. Now you see the wooden foundation at first, that was just temporary. I did switch it out with stone later on, as you'll see in the next scene probably. I went for a more rounded look. I started with a circle, but then I had a small hallway to go out one way and another one to go out the other way. This is a usual build that I used to do in Conan Exiles all the time, and I figured it would be suitable here for my more primitive, simplistic playthrough. I built a dock that went off into the pond for a short amount of distance. I also built a bridge across one of the rivers to the other side, where I'm going to be placing a lot of the more, I would say, non-roleplay friendly dinosaurs, the ones that I want to tame or have tamed, but are not, bears and wolves, something that would fit my theme. So I'm not going to get rid of them, I'm just going to put them into the timeout corner. Between the two doors where there's less space, I ended up putting a workstation there, which you'll see later on. I began taking off all of the items from the dinosaurs that brought it over from the old base and began distributing it into my new storage units. And overall, I was starting to make it more homey. I put a little bit of a fence on the back side of my house, not really any reason other than to look a little bit better in terms of aesthetics. Also, it helps keep the beavers out, as you'll notice that this pond is full of beavers and they do not stop spawning. Unfortunately, there are no fish in the pond, and that's a little bit of a bummer on my end. The preserving rack that you see here is actually from the primitive mod that I installed. Now, unfortunately, later on, I do uninstall it because of some issues that arise, but for now, it looks really cool in my hut. It serves basically like the preserving bin, but it only really works on meat. Any other items that you put in there don't really preserve as well, so I do end up making an actual preserving bin later on. Now it was time to explore not only the nearby areas, but I figured since we have a little wolf that runs really fast, we can explore the entirety of the map. But that's not all. Stay tuned to the end to see what happens. Anyway, I hop on my wolf and I decided to head across the lake first to see what is up in the mountains. And sure enough, my search for metal was short. There is tons of just pure metal nodes everywhere up on the top of the mountain. So I bring along some of my bears so I can mine all of it, at least most of what I can, stick it on them to carry it back home, and I can fill up my forge. Upon my return home, there was a T-Rex attacking my base. Luckily, my creatures were able to fend for themselves and killed the T-Rex. No harm there, no one was hurt, no one died. Well, a little hurt, but not quite dead. Once I made sure that the coast was clear, I returned back to the bears and had them carry the metal to the forge so I could fill it up and start making some metal ingots. As some of the metal started to cook, I took it and began making my fur armor. I made the boots and the gloves first. The pants will come later on once I get some more metal made. The fur color wasn't quite to my liking, so I headed inside and started to prep the cooking pot for making dyes. I don't get to make it right yet, I will be making it later, but at least I can get started seeing what colored berries I need in order to make browns and black dye. I also take a quick look around as my home is starting to actually feel like a home now. It's very small and cozy. Though, before it is time to go out exploring the rest of the map, I do need to do a little bit of farming to make sure I am prepared for my journey. I head back out to the river that you cross to get to the snow biome, and I find stuck saber-toothed babies up on top of a rock. I try to tame them, which I do manage to tame all 3 of them, but they don't follow me, they're still stuck on the rock. I figured, okay, maybe it is the rock itself that has got them stuck, so I try breaking the rock, but they are still floating and stuck up above. It wasn't until later, even after all of my many attempts to try to get them unstuck, even by hitting them to see if it would push them away. Afterward, one of them ends up dying from starvation, which gave the others the freedom in order to start moving around. Unfortunately, a second one soon dropped dead. I quickly hurried to save the third one and put meat into its bag, where it started to eat and not die. I named that one Sabor, and that one will stay with me for my adventures. Not too far away, we also found a Hyaenodon. I got down low and tried to tame her, only she ran off, so I was not successful in that attempt. Hyaenodons are a massive pain in the ass if you don't know how to tame them. You basically have to sneak up to them and pet them. That's your passive way of taming. However, if you get too close too fast, they will run away and you'll have to start all over again. And if there are multiple of them nearby, they will attack you, so you do have to try to get them one by one if you can. Another mod that I added is to add the Shiba Inu dog as a little companion. It seems to me, however, that they always seem to spawn in the water, so most of the time when I find them, they're just always drowned already, which is kind of weird. I went to go take it out of the water, but my wolf decided to eat it instead. Anyway, I soon found an ankylosaur not too far from where I was, and I said, perfect, time to tame it so I can start farming some serious metal. Luckily for me though, I was able to do it on foot as the ankylosaur is slow as shit, so I just, trank arrowed it until it eventually went down, and I put berries in its inventory to tame it properly. I mean, you can see all around me on the beach right there, there is just a ton of metal and obsidian, and in the water just off the shore right there, there's a lot of oil. So, because I needed a little bit of oil, while I waited for the ankylo to tame, I went down into the water. I basically just swam because it really wasn't that deep, and there were no sharks or any kind of enemies that I saw, at least at that moment, and I dove down to farm up some of the oil. Once I got home, all of the metal that I was cooking in the forge was ready to use, so I made the pants for my fur armor set, I upgraded my axe to be metal as well as my spear, I made a couple of other additional items as well, got my food ready, and I began dyeing my armor. I used a ton of browns in order to get the leather and the fur right where I wanted it to, and I dyed the bandana around my head to be black. I don't know why, I just thought it looked better with it being black. Now I am ready for my expedition into the Appalachian Mountains. The first place I decided to explore was northeast of my base, where I found a large frozen lake. It was a bit barren of creatures, but it seemed to be only in that moment, as later on when I came back to revisit it, there were creatures that do spawn here. I was just a bit unlucky at this moment, though it's okay. That means I could take in the beauty without the fear of being eaten by any of the inhabitants of this land. I was also bamboozled, as I thought I had found a cave and I thought this would be perfect to go exploring and spelunking, only to find out it was just a dirt patch in the side of the iceberg. So yeah, no cave there, but there are caves in this map and we need to go and find them. Going north from my base is a massive grassland, and this is one of my favorite areas that I've actually revisited several times since this recording, but there are tons of horses here, especially the new horses from the mod, which is not quite in this video, but you'll see them in probably the next video or the one after that. Either way, there are a ton of creatures out here, from the spiky boys to horses, including Carcharodontosaurus, if that's how you pronounce it, I'm not quite sure, but but there are also other dangers as well. I did find a T-Rex, and I decided to hunt that on wolfback. I battled with the T-Rex for several minutes, but shortly into the battle, a terror bird came out of the forest and began pecking at its ankles. I said, cool, it's actually helping me fight the T-Rex, though at some point as the T-Rex got lower health, I thought, oh no, if I let it kill it, it might eat it before I can get my victory pose. So I had to rush in and kill the terror bird before it could eat the T-Rex. And luckily that was the final blow I also needed for the T-Rex as well. So I went and I posed on top of the mighty beast, establishing my dominance over the grasslands. Though while I may be the king of killing a T-Rex, a Giganotosaurus is surely one thing I cannot take on, let alone two, which were right nearby. I quickly ran into the forest in hopes of trying to lose both of them. Luckily though, they cannot run through the forest nearly as nimble as my wolf, so I did manage to get away, though I think one of them did manage to nip me at one point. As I ran from the Gigas, I made my way into the Redwoods Forest, where I found a really cool, little battle arena of beaver dams. Now, I didn't know it at the time, but there is in fact a world boss that spawns here. You don't see him here at the moment, that's why I didn't know that it was a boss arena when I first, encountered this area, but it is still cool nonetheless. I explored the nearby lake area, and I thought, man, I would have liked to build my house here, but I actually like where it is right now, so I continued on to the west, where I ran into a Gargantodontosaurus. I cannot pronounce that for the life of me, but just pretend you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I have never seen one of these things before. I knew they were in the game, they were added in recently from what I remember, but I've never actually seen one until now, and boy oh boy do they haul ass. I was not expecting it to run that fast. Even with my wolf's great speed, it was still right up on me, biting me every second. It actually did a lot of damage. Luckily, I was able to lose it in the woods, only for it to catch right back up to me. But on the second around, it did not follow me into the woods. So luckily, I did manage to escape that ordeal, but goddamn, I do not want to face those things, at least just yet. I eventually made my way to the northwestern corner of the map. This whole area is a desert biome, just like the Scorched Earth map, and whatever you could find on Scorched Earth, you can find here, from the terrible terror birds to the moths, including the Phaseolasuchus like you see right here. But there are also abandoned mining towns, or at least they think they're mining towns, and you can go inside of them like I do here. Though I also got attacked by a bunch of terror birds that thought they had me cornered. Luckily for me, my wolf is stronger than them, and I was able to take them on easily. I also noticed that this area of the map, as well as the northeastern area of the map, are where a ton of the loot crates seem to spawn. They are easier to find at night, which you'll see me do later on, but for now, I decided to keep exploring this whole area. Opening up my first beacon, which happened to be a red beacon, I found not really anything useful. I took the food that was within it because I am allowed to use food, but I decided I am not using technology in this playthrough, so I didn't really take the gun or anything else that it had in there. And that's going to be a bit of a theme with these loot crates that drop all over the place. A lot of them have technology, but I have to throw it all out because I am not using it on this playthrough. As night fell, I used this as a perfect opportunity to go loot crate hunting and find all of the various ones that spawn in this area, as they glow bright in colors and are very hard to miss. Though that makes the nighttime the perfect opportunity to hunt all of them down, as while you can see them during the day, it's not nearly as easy. Now, I do find a lot more useful stuff on the next few things I find. I find some water pipes, some bear traps, not anything special, but at least I can use them, unlike the red one that I found earlier. After the night spent of looking for all these various loot crates, I continued to explore the desert now that I can see again in the daylight, and I found myself near where a couple of the world bosses spawn. Right where I am is supposed to be where the Chupacabra spawns, but he is not there at the moment, and nearby across the river is supposed to be a giant mountain with the Thunderbird. The Thunderbird is also another cryptid that is based in a real-life cryptid of our Americas. was. Now, I didn't actually check to see if the Thunderbird was there because I did not know he existed at this point of time. I only knew about the Chupacabra because earlier I had seen him, I only ran away, and I could not find him again until later on, but you'll not see that in this video. Now that I was done with the jungle, it was time to head back home, though I was gonna do a sweeping circle to see the southwestern corner that I have not seen yet. South of the desert area is mostly a jungle and wooded area, but eventually you will find a bayou or a wetlands. Now the wetlands area is not finished yet. There are no gators or crocodiles. There are the occasional snake or the baryonyx that you can find, or maybe a titan boa, but in general you're gonna find mostly fish, and of course the world boss, but you will not again see it in this video. That will be for later on. Now, as you saw there, a couple of these spiky boys had me cornered up on a cliff. I had to wait until they were distracted in order for me to run without being seen. Though following this river that I went down, I eventually come across a really cool crystalline cave. It is a very small cave, so there's not much in there to explore. It is mostly for crystal harvesting, but either way, it was a neat little find. Between the desert and this grassland area was a cool little savanna that I found that had elephants. This is another creature from the RR Star mod that I have. These are also creatures that you could find in the Atlas game. Now, I didn't kill it or try to tame it at this moment. I just wanted to look at it and say, wow, that's pretty neat. Though there were a lot of carnivores in the area and I needed to start heading home, so I quickly headed south where I eventually found the bayou that I mentioned earlier. The bayou itself is really neat, but as I said before, it is still being worked on, so there are no creatures, at least not a lot of creatures that spawn here right now, though I am on the Discord and it is currently being worked on. The developer is aware of the issues with the spawning rates in the bayou and are currently being fixed, so by the time you see this video, it might already be fixed with alligators everywhere, snakes everywhere, including Dinosuchus and other creatures of the swamp. Eventually, after about an hour or two of playtime exploring the entirety of the map, at least the majority of the map, I finally make my way home. I store away all of the loot that I found on my adventures from the loot crates, as well as all the various creatures that I had defeated. Though now it was actually time to start thinking about progression. So the first thing I do is I make one of those blood cocktails so I can start taming some of the spiky boys. I started off with just one, though you'll find out probably by the next episode that I'm gonna need more than just one. Even so, I made one for right now and put it away into my inventory. I also went ahead and pre-made the saddle so that is ready to go. Oh, a bit of a side note, the little water scorpions, I cannot pronounce their name either, yeah, those are actually in the river near my base, so if you happen to find them, that's a great source of black pearls if you need them for any reason. I needed them for some of the primitive weapon mod that I needed, but you'll find out pretty soon here that that was a terrible choice. Now, here's a funny thing. I decided to stop recording just so I could do a little bit of farming while I wasn't recording, because, you know, who wants to watch me farm a bunch of metal and trees nonstop? And while I was doing that, both an alpha carno and an alpha raptor attacked me at the same time. Luckily, I had a couple of my bears with me, including my ankylosaur, because we were out farming metal, and we managed to kill both of them. Now I have the arm and that talon that I needed, that I told you about in the first episode, in order to make the primal station for that mod. Excited to finally see this primitive station from the mod I installed, I quickly headed back home with all of the loot that I had acquired. I put the metal from the bear that was stored into the forge so it can start cooking, and I went to create the primitive forge. But then there was another issue. The weapon that I was interested in, which was the Aztec sword, it required around 1500 wood. Holy shit. Anyway, it was time to start farming that wood, so I needed a creature that could help me farm all of that wood easily. Well, Ulf is a pretty good idea. I thought this is a perfect opportunity to go and tame a mammoth. That's one of the key creatures that I wanted to tame for this playthrough. So I prepped myself, I grabbed my wolf, and I headed out to that tundra area that we found in the previous episode where all of the mammoths roam. And yes, we are going to be doing this by moonlight. The moon was setting, dawn would soon be upon us, but as I explored the tundra area, I eventually found a mammoth that would work for me, a level 80 black mammoth. Perfect! Now it was time to take down this mighty beast. I pulled out my trank arrows, and just like with the Carno and all of the creatures before, I kited it around the area, though it wasn't the best area to do so as all of those fallen logs did stop me a few times. But I was determined anyway. It took quite a while. By the time that the mammoth finally did drop, sunrise was coming over the mountains. I had to repair my bow several times by jumping off my wolf, quickly grabbing some fiber and repairing it while still running away from him. But, like I said, eventually he dropped and the fight was over. Now to actually tame him by putting berries into his inventory. Though this next part is also going to take quite a while, and the cold was starting to come in, so I quickly made myself a little campfire to camp out and wait for the mammoth to tame up. I took a couple of badass screenshots of myself, which you've probably already seen before if you follow me on the Discord of the Appalachian, or I've been posting it as well on my community page. Either way, I went AFK for a while, came back, it was now daylight. I took a few more screenshots, but it was still gonna be a while before the mammoth tamed. So, in my boredom, I decided to go on an actual mammoth hunt. This time it was going to be to the death and not into a torpor state. Watch now as I primitively take down this mammoth with a bow and arrow, like a true man of the Ice Age. The battle lasted quite a while, but eventually the mighty beast was felled. And of course, I had to take several badass screenshots with me on top of the mighty mammoth. Now don't worry, I did also realize that hunting it while kiting is a bit cheesy, as I thought it would have been cool, but I'm gonna make a better attempt next time to hunt on foot with just my bow and arrow and spear, and not have to rely on my mount so much. Eventually, the mammoth that I had tamed finally finished taming, so I brought him back home. I went and made a saddle for him and began farming all of that wood. It took quite a while, and unfortunately I did deforest the entire area around my home, which also leads to another issue of the map, is that the trees and the bushes within the snowy locale don't seem to really respawn even if you use a refertilizer, so that's a bit unfortunate. And don't worry, the developer does know about this issue as I let him know on his Discord. But either way, I went to finally make the Aztec weapon, the one I had been waiting for since episode 1. All I needed was an alpha raptor claw and 1500 wood. I finally acquired all of that, and the weapon is bugged. Just like the spear from the first episode, it puts you into a T-pose state. The animations when you are in first person are completely bugged out, and it uses so much stamina with 3 hits rather, you just completely go into a torpor state. I even tried just doing a couple of swings on the beaver. Not only did it do no damage whatsoever, but it didn't even aggro the damn beaver. So yeah, something is up with this mod, and it was at this point that I decided to completely uninstall this mod. And that also meant I uninstalled the other primitive mod, which means no more meat rack, which is a bit sad, but it's okay. I still have the preserving bin. Check it out, I am starting to build my very first farm. I put down a couple of wood foundations just because the land itself is not really that flat. Also, I think it would be really cool having a little overhang over the river. I put down about 5 of the medium farm plots, and even put down a compost pile. Though the compost will take a while, so I had to go around and make sure all of my little pets, just defecated onto the ground so I could pick it up and use it into the farming plot. The brand new pipe system of Ark Survival Ascended is actually quite neat. All you have to do is put in an intake and then put the tap wherever you want. The intake will feed water to the tap automatically without having to have a whole line of pipes running all over the place. I put around a few more decorative items to make it feel a little bit more like home, such as these war drums. But now it was time to go try to tame my own spiky boy. I have the hemoglobin cocktail and I have a mammoth ready to go. The mammoth has a ton of HP, so this will be perfect. Now, it did take me quite a while to find one, but eventually I reached the grasslands, where I spotted several of them. I spotted the one that I wanted to tame, and I ran over, giving the mammoth the buff in order to start the taming process. The taming process of this creature is that once you make this hemoglobin cocktail, you have to feed it to your tame. Your tame then has to tank several hits from the creature, and as he is biting your creature, he will become drunk off the cocktail that you have given your creature. Once they are fully drunk, then you can start passive taming them. However, things didn't go as planned, as my finger accidentally slipped, causing me to dismount. As the creature attacked my mammoth, the mammoth stomped him and completely one-shotted him. So yeah, time to look for another one before the cocktail wears off in around a few minutes. I eventually found a second one and quickly ran over to it before the cocktail disappeared. However, that one ended up failing, as well as by the time they started really biting down into the mammoth, the cocktail had expired. So I ended up just having to kill this one and go back home. As I arrived back home, I went to fix my armor and make some health potions in order to heal myself for the next attempt. I also had to make more cocktails. Now, instead of making just one, because that seemed to have been a mistake, I decided to make 3 of them this time around, though it's gonna be a while before I go back out and try again. Plus, the mammoth is still very low health, so I take this time to continue decorating my home. I logged off about this time, but before I logged back on for the next round, I installed finally the Appalachian creature mod. It is called the Appalachian Denizens mod, and this is what adds in all the new, unique Appalachian creatures, from new creatures altogether to skins and all these various new combinations. So you're going to start seeing a lot more unique creatures from now on, including this mammoth. It looks completely different to the Ark Mammoth, and that's not all. In the next update that he's going to be coming out with, he's going to be adding a second variant of Mammoth, which is going to be much, much larger. So at this point, I will be taking a little bit of a detour to see all of the new creatures, but in essence, I am now going to try to tame my own spiky boy, but I'm taking Ulf this time around, as Ulf still has all of his HP. It is very high, just like the mammoth, but he's also healed, unlike the mammoth, who, even after like 10 minutes or so, it was still very low health. After playing around with a Titanosaur for a little while, I made it back to the grasslands, where you get to see a bunch of new horse models. So they are taking the place of the Equus. Now, the Equus are not completely replaced, as you can still find them occasionally, but in essence, you have a ton of horse models that are from painted to spotted to all these different colors and styles and types. So definitely I am going to be trying to tame at least one, maybe more later on, but for now I still need to look for my spiky boy. I did find one of those Carchodontosauruses or whatever they're called hunting a Gigaraptor. I did get to see the brand new Parasaur that is added with the mod as well, and eventually, as I ventured further into the grassland, I did find a horse with a baby, and just like all of my other tames, I killed the parent and took the baby for myself. Now I've got my own little horse. Now, during all of that, I didn't even realize that my dehydration meter had hit 0. Oh no, there's no water nearby, so now I have to go find somewhere to drink. Now, it did look like a river was somewhat northwest of me. I headed up there, but I think the map is wrong, as there was no river whatsoever. I tried going through the brush to see, oh, maybe it's just behind the trees, only to find a freaking Giganotosaurus, so I had to run from them quickly, and I just followed the map until I could find the big big river where I can finally quench myself. Ooh, that was a bit of an ordeal. Now I can head back to try to get that new horse I had. But on the way, I found another spiky boy. Alright, here's my chance. So I give the cocktail to Ulf and I go to try to tame this one. And for once, it finally worked. It made them completely drunk and I was able to passive tame them with some meat I had brought. Actually, wait, I forgot the meat at home. So I had to go nearby to a Stegosaurus. I killed that and I killed the Stegosaurus baby. I took the prime meat and I used that to tame the spiky boy. Now I have a spiky boy. Trying to lead them back where I left my little baby horse was a bit difficult, as I think it had to do with the drunk debuff that it had on them, or it was just bad pathing. Either way, as we were leading it back, it kept trying to divert off and run into a tree or run into a rock. I'm just gonna blame it on the drunkenness. Either way, I get back to the baby horse, I make myself a saddle real quick, I hop on top of him, and I lead Ulf and my new spiky boy back home. Though not without some issue, as I headed from the grassland back into the forest, we got completely ganked by a ton of different creatures. From a Carnotaur to even terror birds, I believe. And luckily, Ulf and the Ceratosaurus were completely loyal and defended my new horse from being killed. The creature mod was not the only mod I added. I also added one to put up some torches around the base that will not use fuel. Well, I lied. It needs one to get started, but then it doesn't need any more after that. It is all purely cosmetic. So I put a couple of those around my house. I put up a sap collector, but I didn't realize that the sap collector needed to be really high up on the tree. So I'm gonna have to build a ladder in order to reach it. As I start building the ladder, or at least the foundation for my ladder, I get ganked by a Carnotaur. And I was true to my word, I did not kite it like I did the mammoth. I fought it mano a mano with my spear until it finally went down. I did my little victory pose with the Carno like I always do, but then I realized it looked different. This is actually a reskin for the Appalachian map. So that got me wondering, what else haven't I seen yet that is new from the mod? I quickly finished the ladder up into the sap. I had to put a couple of spiral staircases until I could eventually make a platform so I could reach the sap collector. It was also really pretty doing it at night because I had all the green lights illuminating the area at the same time. But eventually I finished it and I said, alright, let's go see what else is out there. So I hopped up on my mount, mainly my wolf, as Ulf is still damaged as well as the mammoth, and I headed back out to the tundra area to see if I could find any new creatures. And eventually I did. I found an Irish elk, but this one is much different than the base game. You could definitely tell the antlers look a lot more realistic rather than the flat, almost moose-like ones that the default game has, and I really like how it looks. Right next to it was also a caribou, which actually did look like a caribou. It was really cool looking. So one of them I decided to hunt, and the other one I decided to tame. I took a quick gamble, and I went for the Irish elk in order to tame while I hunted the caribou. I did have to ride Wolf back, as the caribou did give me the slip several times. It is just fast. Also, the pathing is broken, so it takes a tight turn every 5 seconds. But eventually I led it into the river where I got some good hits into it. I went into the river, got my meat, but I also saw that there were some little otters swimming around. So I took this moment to tame one of them, and I named him Floof. Spelled F-L-U-U-F, because I thought that was adorable. And I will take Floof home with me to meet Bartholomew. Though besides the otters swimming around, there are also brand new fish. Now, I didn't realize that at first because I just killed a coelacanth in order to tame the otter, but as I went into the big river outside my base, I found a catfish. And you're gonna find a lot more various types of fish, from bluegill, small and even big mouth basses, and all different types of other fish in this map. It is amazing, and I love the variety of fish. With all of these new additions, I had to give all of them names, so I already told you that I named the otter Floof. I named my horse Ocelot because he's got spots like a cat. I named the deer Thandril, and I named the spiky boy just simply Spike. Dropping them back off home, I headed back out to find a Brachiosaur. This is from one of the Ark Additions mods. but even so, they are towering. I think the largest creature in the game, rivaling the Titanosaur. They are absolutely massive, and I do not want to mess with it, so I continued on. I found a female caribou, which is just what you expected. It looked just like the caribou, but without the antlers. But even so, it looks so much better than the default that I just had to look at it a little bit longer. Now, remember an episode or two ago where I found the boss arena that's supposed to have the beaver boss? I headed back there now knowing that there is something there. However, I still did not find him. They do not always spawn where they are supposed to, at least the bosses. They are randomly spawned in, so I had to just kill a few things and wait around, but it still didn't spawn, so I will try again later. I continued northeast to explore more of this area that I had not been to before. It very much was a tundra-like area, but there was more than just that. Up into the glacier above me was the red obelisk, completely covered in ice. I had not seen that up until now, so I thought it was absolutely amazing. I tried to get a closer look, but there were just way too many carnivores, including a Spinosaur nearby, that were all trying to aggro on me, so I had to leave. Back at home, I noticed something across the lake there. I used my spyglass in order to see what it was. It was a new model of a bear. As you see, Ursoc right there is the normal dire bear. As I zoomed in with the spyglass, you can see this one is much larger, even hulking. I thought that was absolutely amazing, and I wanted to get a closer look and even see if I could tame this mighty beast. But unlike the dire bears, who are only territorial and attack you when you get close, these bears are highly aggressive and will aggro to you from far enough distance. I quickly got out my crossbow to try to tame it, only it did not work out so well. I don't know if it was just my taming method or if it was the arrows itself, but it ended up killing the bear rather than dropping it in a torpor state. Though I realized later on in another attempt that I do that it is just the way I was doing it, as the arrows is how you torpor it and tame it, but you're not going to see that just yet. I was not discouraged. I still needed to build my army if I had any hope of taking on these world bosses that I've been searching for. Besides the beaver, there are at least 4 or 5 other world bosses that I have not yet found yet, so I need to go out and continue taming to build this army to take all of them on. In this search, back in the grasslands, I found a T-Rex with some odd coloring fighting a Dinotherium. Dinotheriums would be perfect as they are very powerful with a ton of health. However, I do not have the requirements to tame it just yet, so I'm going to have to skip out on this one and continue my search. Back at the river near my base, I found some raccoons. I had not seen these yet, so I followed one around to watch it. It looked like you had to passive tame it the same way as an otter, with a little fish. So I go to try to find a fish to feed the raccoon, though it was not impressed by the massive fish that I was trying to give it as tribute. I think these raccoons are bugged, so I tried an alternative method, which is my go-to: kill the parent and take the baby. But that did not seem to work either, as the babies also required a fish, and it didn't work again with a different fish and a different raccoon. So for now, I'm gonna have to wait until I can get myself a little raccoon friend. At this point, I decided to take a little bit of a break and roleplay. I walked myself through the woods until I could find myself some prey to hunt. And sure enough, I found another deer, which I chased on foot and tried to take him down. It was much harder to do this without my wolf, but I did promise that I was not going to kite every single creature that I tried to hunt this way, so I continued chasing after it, alternating between my bow and my spear. As it got close in its running animation, I would hit it with my spear, and as it got far, I would switch to my bow. Eventually, a terror bird would come out of nowhere and attack and kill my prey. Well, I wasn't going to let that happen, so I killed the terror bird. While it wasn't the deer that I was stalking and wanting to hunt, it was still a prize nonetheless. After I got in my small amount of roleplay, I headed across the river near my base to find tons of those bears I found earlier in the episode. This time, I was actually going to try to tame it. I put down several bear traps in hopes that it would stop them just long enough so I could use my trank arrows. Though I didn't realize how many bears there were. It got to the point that I had to kite them because there's no way I could take all of them on at the same time. I picked a target and continuously fired at that one as I continued to kite all of the other ones. Eventually, I did manage to take a couple of them down at a time, so there wasn't nearly as many on me at once. Soon enough, the one that I picked out of the group did fall to the torpor. I did try to torpor others, but it didn't work out so well. Either way, as the one was beginning to tame, I continued to try to take them out one at a time, until eventually all of the other bears had fallen. With the companion at my side, I slowly grow my army. I hop onto the bear. Luckily, it does not need a saddle, so I was able to just jump on it right away and take it out for a spin. The bear itself does function like the normal bear, though it does hit a little bit harder than I noticed and have way more health. But anyway, now it's time to actually start taking on the world bosses. So, we are going to be taking on at least 3 bosses this episode. But first, before I can take on any bosses, I need to tame a little doggo. So this is a Shiba Inu from the Shiba Inu mod. It's very cute. He supposedly does something while he's on your shoulder, but I don't really take him out much because I'm afraid for his life and he's pretty weak. So I go to tame more creatures because fighting these bosses is no joke. Now, I fought all of these bosses, and this video itself was recorded about 3 months ago from when you're watching this, and at that point in time, the bosses were not really that hard, but if you're watching it today, yeah, these bosses are no joke. But for now, because this is before they got buffed, I go out and I tame a bunch of creatures. I tried to tame them with the horse, but kicking nonstop at a bunch of wolves knocked out my horse, as you saw there. Horse got back up, and I tamed a baby Sabertooth as well as a couple of wolves. But I also went out and collected tons of awesome epic gear from the loot crates. Going out at nighttime is beneficial because you can see the bright lights much easier in the dark. I made mention of this in an episode or 2 ago, but I find tons of tools, equipment, a Mastercraft pike, I found a purple bow, I find all this really good gear, and that's gonna help a lot when it comes to fighting these bosses. Though with so much acquired loot, I determined I needed a larger storage space. So I made an add-on to my house where I will be making it into a small storage room, and I will be making the larger storage boxes and fitting them in sideways so I can fit multiple of them rather than just one. It will be definitely an upgrade from the little ones that I had been using up until now. But now that the chores are out of the way, it is time to gather the troops and head toward the swamp, where we're going to be fighting our first boss battle, the one that you saw on the thumbnail, Gormand, the large albino gator with tons of scarring on it from past battles. On the way to the swamp though, I did see a Gigantopithecus, one with a child, so as tradition dictates, I kill the adult and tame the baby. The baby I then name Little John. I thought it fit perfectly. I did wait around a little bit for him to grow up. I went AFK, did some chores around the house. Once he was grown up and was able to at least keep up with me, because when they're babies they can't really, walk that fast, but once they're about adolescent, juvenile-ish, then they can run, at least keep up with you. So once that happened, we continued on to the swamp. It took quite a while because I did have to wait up for a couple of them, but going through all the trees and foliage, we eventually make it to the swamp. We search around a little bit until we eventually hear the boss music. Now, I left Little John behind. He was way too weak to take on the boss battle, but we scoured the cliffside until eventually we saw movement. I made myself a spyglass, which definitely comes in handy for these kind of moments, and there it is. Now, it does say Dinosuchus because, well, it uses a Dinosuchus model, but it is Gormand the boss battle. Eventually, it will be renamed. I think it is renamed as of you watching it right now, but also this is now pretty much one of, if not the strongest boss battle on this map. But when I fought it, I didn't know it at the time, so I stood up on the cliff wondering what I should do to fight this mighty beast. Eventually, I just took the plunge. Well, not quite yet, actually. I tried to hit it with my crossbow first, seeing what that would do. I definitely got its attention, but then I decided, alright, this is not gonna go anywhere, so I then made the plunge and launched all of my dinos off of the cliff to fight it. Now, my strategy at the time for fighting it with its current state was using the bear as a tank because he had so much health on him. Now, Gourmand is a Dinosuchus, which means that they are inclined to use their Mega Bite ability, so it is a little bit easy to avoid it if you are solo, but if they're using their normal bite, they do have a very quick turn radius, so doing the circling method isn't really that good. You can, of course, kite it if you are solo, and have, stronger weapons than I do now, like rocket launchers and machine guns, but I am doing a primitive playthrough, so I only have bows and arrows. Now, eventually, I did defeat Gourmand. It took quite a while of me basically circling them around, keeping the attention on my bear to take most of the damage and tanking it, while the rest of my creatures DPS'd him down from behind. Luckily, it didn't do a tail swipe ability, it just mainly bit and chomped. Now, the normal bites I just took head on, but when he did the Mega Bite, I would run away to avoid that much damage, because it does hurt quite a while. And then, eventually, it went down, and I reaped all of the rewards, which was a ton of material. Now, this was fixed as of, you playing it right now, but when I fought him at this point in time, they would give you tons of organic polymer and tons of element and a bunch of stuff that was basically encumbering for any creature that got the kill. But all of the trophies go straight to your bag. So as you see there, tons of element, organic polymer, cementing paste. That of course was reduced way down as of right now, but all of the trophies still are there. Only now you get the actual artifact rather than a blueprint to make it, which is kind of odd. But now it was time to head home, so I bring home Little John and everyone else. And I tried placing the trophy on the wall after, depositing all of that excess stuff. Now, I did throw out the element because I am not going to be using it on this playthrough, but I did keep the cementing paste because it's very useful, and that means I wouldn't have to farm around for it. Plus, there are no beaver dams, unfortunately, they just don't want to spawn. But anyway, I tried placing the trophy on the wall. I tried the head trophy because I figured, the full body would be too big. Let's try the head. Oh, yeah, so it pretty much is the size of my entire house, because the trophies themselves will be to scale the size of the boss that you kill. So it wasn't going to work out that well, because it pretty much blocks my entire entrance. And then for shits and giggles, I decided to put the whole body mount to see what would happen. Yeah, so it pretty much goes outside of my house. I couldn't even see where I was going because it was so large. So I didn't really want to get rid of it because it is cool, but I had to figure out some other way of displaying the mighty trophy that I had acquired from Gourmand. Eventually, I made myself a little post outside near the water by the glacier. And when I set it out, it was perfect. It took up all that empty space, but it also kind of encircled where I put the drum, so it looked great. So yeah, that's pretty much Gourmand, but we have 2 more boss battles for the rest of this video. So, in order to get to them, I decided to build a dock. The dock will lead just outside of my base towards the river instead of the pond, and I made myself a raft. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because, traveling with a ton of creatures from here to the swamp was very annoying. If I put them all on a boat, then I could just sail. Now, yeah, the boat is pretty slow, but at that point in time, I won't have to stop constantly for creatures to catch up. They're getting caught on rocks, caught on trees, so this would be pretty much the easier way, even though it is the slowest way. But yeah, I made the dock to reach out into the river a little bit. I build up a raft to be kind of like a boat. Now, the boat itself looks a little bit more, I would say, modern, at least colonial-ish, kind of like a pirate ship, when I'm really kind of going for a primitive, more, tribal vibe, but it's gonna have to work for right now because I didn't want to make just a floating platform to move the creatures around in. I really wanted to look more unique, so I tested it out after I made the first initial build, and it definitely fits the mammoth, but that means no other creature would be able to fit. So yeah, mammoth, check, but I'm gonna have to leave the mammoth home in order to bring a lot more creatures, because I plan on fighting multiple bosses, so I'm gonna need multiple creatures in order to do it. I even tried bringing John this time around, but for some reason the Gigantopithecus does not like the raft for some reason. It just did not want to be on the raft, which is odd because it worked in Survival Evolved, so the fact that it's bugged in Survival Ascended, it kind of caught me off guard. I didn't know that was going to happen, but unfortunately, that means Little John is going to have to stay home. But everyone else, Spike, Sabor, everyone else is coming with me. Now, this river does span almost the entire map, so it did take a while, but on that note, on the way to the desert, there is another boss battle that we can face. Timberjack. Now, I've been to this area multiple times in the last couple of episodes, as you saw, but I didn't even know Timberjack was there, or when I did, he wasn't around because at this point in time, the spawning was a little bit low, but now there is a Timberjack. I bring all of my guys to face off against him. Now, Timberjack, I think even with the buffs that the developer made today, is still one of the easiest bosses to defeat. He's very small as well, so it might be a little bit hard to spot him because unlike the other creatures which are, 20 times larger than their realistic size, Timberjack is still a really big beaver, but comparatively, he is very small, so I almost didn't even see him in the brush itself, plus his brown pattern kind of camouflaged him. But eventually, I did find him, and we decided to face off. All my creatures rush into him. I tried fighting him on foot, but he was just way too small and got piled on by the other creatures, so I jumped up onto a log to get a better advantage so I could help out with my crossbow. Eventually he went down, no issue at all. All my creatures are still pretty much fully healed. It was pretty good, so I had a rush. I was like, oh man, we're taking down 2 bosses, let's go for a third. So we hop back onto the boat and we sailed to the desert where there's at least 2 bosses there waiting for us. And the one that I go for first is the Chupacabra. Now, I did find this one a bit, I would say off stream, even though I wasn't really streaming, it's a recording, but you know what I mean. I did find it once before when I was exploring, but I did not face it off because I, wasn't prepared at the time. Now, because I've taken on 2 boss battles, I think I am prepared enough. I did have to hop on Spike in order to see it because, again, Chupacabra is kind of small, similar to Timberjack, but after getting that height advantage, I did find him, plus the boss battle music kind of tipped him off as well. So we face off against Chupacabra. Now, in my hubris, I did not realize that this one was going to be much harder than Timberjack. Timberjack was pretty much a pushover, but with Chupacabra, they do a conal AoE ability with their slash, which deals a ton of bleeding damage, and that's what really got my troops. Look at this. One by one, my troops start falling to this beast. My Sabertooth goes down, the Grey Wolf goes down, and eventually we do take out the Chupacabra. I was like, oh man, 2 of my guys went down, but then Sabor dies after the Chupacabra dies because of the bleeding damage. Like, Jesus, I was actually surprised that the Terror Bird lived, and look at Spike. Spike was half dead. So yeah, the Chupacabra is no joke, and this was still the nerfed state. I don't even want to know what it would be like during right now when it's super buffed up. But now that I've lost so many troops and my creatures that are remaining are pretty much almost dead, I decided, yeah, I'm not going to be able to take on the second boss of the desert, and I head home back on my boat with my tail a little bit between my legs. The only thing I had to show for it was a brand new Chupacabra trophy, as well as the Timberjack trophy. Now, just like Gourmand, the Chupacabra trophy was a little bit too big for my house, so I ended up placing it outside of my house, but I did place it on the wall of my house rather than on the mountain or something, because it wasn't that big, really. It just was too big for my little one-story side hut. However, Timberjack did fit inside of my house, so I placed him on the wall next to the back door. It actually looks pretty cool on the wall right there, but yeah, I had to move the Chupacabra outside. I've got Gourmand outside, Timberjack inside. I am building a collection of trophies from all of the boss battles, and there's still many more to come. but because I lost so many troops, it's gonna be a while to rebuild my army and try again. To honor all of those that had fallen, I decided to make gravestones near my base on the way to the river, and this unfortunately does grow over the next few episodes. So, two things happen in this episode that are a little bit sad. I'm going to tell you right away now, and then I'll remind you when it does get up to that point in the episode. So, first things first, between the last episode and this episode, I upgraded my computer, a whole new motherboard, a brand new processor. It's great, but unfortunately, something during that process messed up with the mod. All of my mods got reset, so all of my decorative mods gone. The Appalachian Denizens mod, that one also got messed up, which means all of the tames from that mod and the mod of the Star or StarRR or whatever it was called, all of those tames are gone. So as you see, I'm doing a head count to see who is left. Really, it's just the base game animals, and this actually got me a little bit depressed because I had lost so much, progress from just a stupid little mistake or something that I actually didn't play for a while after this. But eventually I did hop back on. I used my mammoth to clear out the brush because even the brush got reset for some reason, and I went to place down gravestones for all of those that were lost during this transition period. Even though they didn't technically die, it's still worth, remembering them, including little Bartholomew, who we've had since episode 1. But since I'm down dinos, I have to go back out and tame as many as I can because these boss battles are not going to fight themselves. So just outside of my house, I tamed a really beautiful Appalachian Carnotaur with that red and blue. It was very contrasting, and not only that, it had a baby, so I tamed 2 of them, which was great. Afterward, I killed a mammoth and I tamed a couple of the babies. I even went to the plains to tame even more creatures. But of course I also took in the sights because there was a titanosaur as well as a brachiosaur, a couple of them really, which I almost never see out in the plains, so it was really cool. I also saw a Carchodontosaurus, which, yeah, I'm still gonna avoid those for now, but it won't be long until I try my hand at that, though that's for another episode. I decided, hey, you know what? I actually looted a couple of beers from one of the loot crates, so I would be able to tame the Dinotherium. I am the correct level, I have the correct item, though the last time I tamed one was back in Scorched Earth, so it actually took a while for me to remember how to exactly tame one. I knew you had to wait for it to catch its attention and then you could run up to it, but I had forgotten about the 3 facial expressions that you had to wait for. So yeah, this one kind of stomped at me. Luckily I had a getaway ride nearby, but the 2 Dinotheriums continued to chase me. So I had an idea. What if I led them to the Carchodontosaurus? So that's what I did. One of them actually did aggro on, though he did not last long against the giant predator. The other one went straight for me, and I would have gotten away with my mighty timber mount, only for a freaking Microraptor to come out of nowhere, knock me off of my mount, and left me dazed so the Dinotherium can stomp on my ass. Yeah, that was pretty annoying, but don't worry, me and Timber did make it out successfully, and on the way home we made a detour where we find a Thylacoleo. I absolutely love these mounts because of their climbing ability. It's great for quick getaways. Now luckily this one was distracted by a snail, so I was able to easily take him down. After that, I tamed up a bear and some other creatures. So, after that taming spree, I decided I wanted to take a little bit of a break and head out to the oil fields. The oil fields is one of the areas that I liked to roleplay hunt, kind of, when I just needed a break from progressing, but as I went out there, I soon heard boss battle music. This was new because I had never heard boss battle music before. Well, since the last time I played, when I lost all of my tames, yeah, the boss battles, all of them really, have had their spawning rate tuned up. So not only do they have more areas that they spawn in, but sometimes you can have multiple of them spawn in the exact same area, which actually leads to a bit of an issue with the next episode you're gonna see. But for now, off in the distance, I see Kaya, one of the bosses of this map, and Kaya is pretty strong. Not as strong as Nanook, which you'll see later on, but she is a little bit easier than Nanook. Either way, I was not ready to take on a boss battle with just my wolf, so I started heading back home where I found another spiky boy. Well, I had to replace Spike since I lost him, so I tamed up this one. Now here's the second sad story of today's video. As you see here, I'm loading up my bear to go on an adventure with my raft. I originally had recorded myself going out into the swamp and out into the ocean and taming a bunch of ocean creatures to start progression in that area. Unfortunately, 2 hours of recordings, something happened where OBS stuck on a single frame, and I did not realize that. So when I went to go check my footage, all of the footage were stuck on the same frame, which was like a frame of me looking at my inventory for some reason. But yeah, all of that footage is gone. But what I can say that happened was, nothing really happened in the swamp. I tried finding a couple of Dinosuchus to tame, but it didn't really work out that well. I went into the ocean and I tamed up a shark, as well as a couple of turtles and Dzungariotherium. So what you're gonna see now is the aftermath of the tames. I brought them all back home. I managed to make a saddle for the Megalodon because he was actually pretty fast, and I made a saddle for one of the turtles, which I didn't realize gives you oxygen when you're down below with them. So I'm gonna make the turtle my primary mount for underwater exploration. But that was not all. That was only half of what I lost. The other half of me playing was gathering up my troops that I had just tamed from one of my Carnotaurs, one of the new red ones. I had 2 Dinotheriums, I had a Rex, and a couple of other tames that we went out to try to hunt down Nanook, the white bear boss. Now, that did not go so well. Nanook is probably one of the strongest boss battles on this map, and you'll see the entire next episode will be the Ballad of Nanook, of me fighting him. And right here, what you're going to be seeing is a re-recording. Because I had lost all that footage, I didn't want to leave you hanging, so what I did was I turned on admin mode and I spawned in a couple of pre-tamed in creatures equivalent to approximately what I had fighting Nanook, and I rushed them into Nanook to let Nanook kill them, just to kind of simulate the battle that took place. Only when it actually happened, it was up on top of the cliff where we were. Nanook is down below because it chased me down there when I ran away, because I did in fact live from that fight, but every single tame that I had brought died. So yeah, this is just a simulation of what happened to give you an idea, but afterward I had to rethink my plan of how to fight Nanook, which you're gonna see later on. After my defeat with Nanook, I head home and I made graves for all of those that had fallen. As you see, my graveyard is getting much larger, which is not really a good idea. So this is where I get a little bit more conservative with my tames. I do go out and tame more to build back up my army, but most of the next bosses I try doing without tames, or at least with little tame usage as possible, because I kind of got tired of losing my tames over and over, because now this is, I believe, the 3rd wipe that I had done since the last episode. Once against Nanook, twice against Nanook, once against Kaya. It was getting tedious. I do head back to the plains, which is my favorite area to tame, because I do want to fill in the void that all of my other tames had left. But that is where I find another boss battle that I actually did not know about until I heard the boss music. But before we get to that, I first need to tame a new Dinotherium. I have one beer left from that loot crate that I found them in, which means this is my last chance to get a good Dinotherium and not lose them to Nanoh. Now that I've remembered how to tame them because I tamed two earlier, I was able to tame this one successfully. It took a bit of waiting because they give little head movements to tell you if it's safe to approach. From little ear wiggles to their trunk swaying side to side, you have to look for the correct ones in order to approach them without being stomped. Even then, you have to stand in the right spot and you have to be quick about it, or they'll still stomp you even if they give you the symbols to come up closer. But I successfully tamed this one and I start heading back home, where on the way home I tame another Rex. But this one is different. As you see, I now have an ascended crossbow. I found this in a loot crate not too long ago from taming the Dinotherium, and I wanted to give it a try. The ascended crossbow is so much better. If, let's say, the normal crossbow took about 10 shots to take down the Rex, the ascended would take him down in 3 to 4 shots. It was amazing. I'm gonna be able to take down stuff so much faster with this crossbow. I don't really use it for boss fights because I just didn't want to. I primarily use my crossbow for taming. On that note, I just tame a couple of Daeodons, because Daeodons actually give an AoE wide healing, which I never really thought about that before. I had completely forgotten about it until I saw a pack of them up there and remembered, oh yeah, they heal. They eat a ton of meat, but I can solve that easily because I have the gathering rate tuned up a little bit. So I tamed two of them, which I named Chunky Druid and Chunky Cleric respectively. While they were taming, I found a couple of rhinos. One was an Appalachian rhino which has one horn, and the other one was a basic Ark one with 2 horns. So I named them Uno and Dos. Yes, I am very creative with those names. Now, while all 4 of them were taming, I saw a sheep nearby. For fun, I decided to run it down and shoot at it. And then, out of nowhere, as you just saw, a bunch of babies just kind of came flying out of the sky and spawned on top of the deer that I was hunting. So I said, oh, okay, I guess I am going to be killing this one to tame the babies, as I do for pretty much most of my other tames, which is what I do there. And I don't really have names for them just yet, but they're also not that strong to go into combat, so they're going to be more like pets rather than part of my army. But either way, now it was time to bring all of them back home, from the rhinos to the Daeodons, a new wolf that I had tamed, and the baby rams. So remember a few minutes ago where I said I heard new boss battle music out near the plains? So yeah, that new boss battle that I spoke about is Goliath, a massive fish. I'm actually not sure what kind of fish. It looks almost like a catfish. But I bring my water creature tames along because he is a part of this river that is connected to my house. It is just way further north by the plains. On the way there, I stop at the plains because I don't want to bring them in just yet. I want to leave them there. And I find a loot crate that gave me a brand new bow that is stronger than my old one. Good thing too, because it was about to break. But now I head into the river near the plains to look for Goliath, and there was not just one, but 2 Goliaths. Because I said before, the spawning rate had tuned up a little bit since the last time I played, and yeah, it led to multiple boss tames in the same area. Now this part actually kind of scared me a little bit. I went above water to, swim closer, and then as I go back down, both of them jumped me at the same time. I did in fact yell during this moment because that was kind of scary. But yeah, these guys hit really hard. Not as hard as Nanoh or Kaya, or even some of the other boss battles, and luckily enough, they kind of do like a guerrilla warfare where they'll come up, bite you a few times, and then they swim away for a little bit before turning around and attacking you again. And like I said before, I did not really want to bring my tames in unless I had to, so I tried fighting Goliath all by myself. which is not really a good idea in hindsight, but I managed to separate one of them from the other. I went at them a little bit with my crossbow just for that added damage, but also because my normal bow is useless underwater. The thing is, Goliath has a ton of health, being a world boss. It may not seem like it because he is a fish, but he does in fact have at least a couple 100,000 health. So yeah, at some point, trying to pull him to the beach where I'd be safe, going back down, shooting him while he's running away, and then swimming out as he came back at me, I eventually ran out of arrows. I tried to use my spear a couple of times when he was up close, but he wasn't up close that often. Sometimes he did get stuck on a rock, and that was great for me to use my spear and save my arrows, but that wasn't always the case, and he would just swim away. At some point in time, I got low health, I ran out of arrows, so I took up a bit of an intermission so I could head up to the plains and try to find some trees to make more arrows. There's very few trees that I found, but I did eventually find some. I made some arrows, not many, maybe like 22 or so, and I headed back into the water to see if that would be enough to kill him. Spoiler alert, it was not. I sat there even longer trying to hunt down this Goliath with just my crossbow and spear. It got to the point where I tried even throwing my normal stone spears at him because I just had no more ammo, and he did not even seem like he was close to low health. Having gotten cocky while doing this, I ended up losing a lot of health from his hits. So I swam back up on shore, and I pretty much laid there on the beach in defeat, thinking, what else can I do? And then I remembered, oh yeah, I have tames nearby. So I ran back down the river, not too far from where I am right there, and I grabbed all of my tames to come back and defeat Goliath. Now, the issue is they're going to have to fight both at the same time, which they do. They actually split off and team up to take on each of the different Goliaths. Now, because I said earlier that they do like the guerrilla warfare, they only do a couple of bites and then swim away, this was much better. As you see, a lot of my tames are taking a ton of damage, but they're not consistently taking damage, which means it gives them enough time to DPS them down. Luckily, the one that I had damaged already, I believe, goes down first because he was already low health, and then they switch over to attack the other one. Both of them go down without a hitch, and I am so lucky that none of my tames died. Very close though, a lot of them were pretty damaged afterward. But now that I have Goliath in the bag, literally as I have his trophy in the bag, I can now head home and mount it on my wall. This definitely gave me a boost in confidence after losing so many tames from the last few boss battle attempts. So I gather up my current army, the one that I had just gathered in the last couple of playthroughs, and I decided, you know what? I defeated Goliath. Let's try a different boss, one that I've not fought before. Nearby in the tundra, earlier you saw that there was a new bear boss called Kaya. So I gather up the troops and I head over to the tundra area where we are going to face Kaya. I bring my Dinotherium, one of my Rexes, and a Deodon for healing. Now I get close enough to the tundra and then I hop on my wolf to scout around a little bit. Once I hear the boss battle music, I bring everyone up closer until I hop back on my Dinotherium, where then I use the roar ability of the Dinotherium to buff everybody before charging them into battle. Now Kaya is definitely a, I would say, moderately hard boss fight, as you'll notice a lot of my tames, especially the rhinos who are jam-packed full of HP stats, they get taken out fairly quickly. Uno is the first one to go down in this fight. Now unfortunately my Dinotherium, he's so big and clunky that he doesn't really get any hits in because I'm just behind everyone else in the pack. So eventually I do hop off of him so I can help out with my bow and arrow while the Dinotherium himself can figure it out and attack with his own attacks. Though I see the dreaded red text. One by one, Little John, Jane, all of my tames are going down, and it was actually starting to worry me. I thought, oh no, am I going to lose everybody all over again after I just recovered them, and I even brought some of my other creatures from at home that I haven't used before? All of them go down, except for the Dinotherium. I'm sitting there facing against Kaya, using my bow and arrow, desperately trying to kill it with a couple of hits until Kaya takes me down. At this point in time, I feel like I lost the entire battle. All of my tames are dead. So I run back, hopefully to get my stuff back. Maybe Kaya is just far enough away that I can gather my stuff, but then I noticed my Dinotherium is still standing there and not attacking anything. As I got closer, Kaya's body lay there dead. So as I had died, my Dinotherium, who I named Gameth after the Monster Hunter creature, he actually survived and he's very low health. So it wasn't a complete loss, but because I had lost so many in that fight, I had to honor them by making gravestones. And Floof got out of the house! Oh no! Luckily he was right outside and I was able to pick him up, but imagine my surprise when I go inside and I don't see him, only to notice that he had escaped. Anyway, this episode we're going to be taking on 3 world bosses. Now, these world bosses are no joke. I have been saying this since the last, I would say, 2 episodes. But first things first, before we attempt our first one, I still need to put up the trophy of Kaya the Black Bear. I thought it would look really cool if I put it on the mountain just above Gormand, only that little speck of rock didn't let me build on it, so unfortunately I had to build it on the iceberg just a little further down. It didn't look the way I wanted it to, but it's gonna have to do for now. I used my Thiacoleo in order to climb up. This is my favorite mount, as it is so versatile when you're climbing up and trying to traverse the various maps. Now, because I've lost so many tames in the last couple of episodes trying to hunt down all of these world bosses, I'm kind of sick and tired of it, so I decided to take a different approach for Nanook. Nanook has already killed multiple of my tames, not to mention Kaya having killed a ton more afterward. So what I am going to do is I'm going to try to do a solo run. By doing that, I am creating tons of metal spikes. I created a ballista, tons of bolts, arrows, and large bear traps. The idea behind this is that I'm going to perch up high where I can fire the ballista from. Now these spikes is because the ballista will be high up enough where I won't be able to aim just below it. So these spikes would keep him at a distance so I could fire, and if all else fails, I'll have my bow and arrow. Now I do bring one mount. That is because, well, first of all, I have to get to where Nanook is, and second of all, it will be my getaway if all else fails. Now, Nanook has several spawning locations. This one is the closest to my base and it is the most open, perfect for a fight to the death. Now I start setting up on a rock that I think is high enough to perch up on. This is my first time setting this up, so it takes me a little while to get it perfect. Now, it didn't end up being completely perfect, but for what I was going for, it will have to do, at least for right now, and you'll see why. So, I start setting up all these spike traps, I set up the bear traps. Now, the bear traps are to, hold it in place so I can get some good hits on it. I set up a little bit of a ladder just in the event that I fall so I can get myself back up quickly. The last thing I want is for him to catch me when I'm down below and kill me ravenously. But that is also why I am putting down a bedroll so I can get back up right away if I do end up perishing, which luckily did not happen, but you'll see that this first attempt did not go so well. So once all the traps are set up, I think I am ready, and now it's time to pull Nanook. One thing you ought to keep in mind, at least right now as this is being recorded, is that a lot of the world spawns have multiple spawns. The spawning rate has been tuned up so much that you might get 3, 4, 5, even 6 of the same world boss in the same area, and that is no different for Nanook. Now, right now, luckily there is just one, but unfortunately more do spawn later on, which means this open area is not going to be fully open to me. But they do keep their distance, which means this little side area will be completely fine for the one that I decide to pull, which I end up finally doing. It took a while, as you notice that there were a couple of ballista bolts that I had missed because I tried pulling him with that, it didn't turn out so well, so I had to use my bow to pull him. Once he got close enough, then I switched to the ballista. He ended up getting stuck between these spikes and the rock. Not quite what I was going for, but I managed to get a ton of hits in him, just completely railing him. He ran away for a minute and then he came right back, climbing right over the rock and between the spikes. That scared the crap out of me. I did not expect him to just waltz right up the wall, bypassing all of the spikes that I had put down. I quickly get on my getaway mount and take off. Now time for round 2. Since the Nanook had ran pretty much after me, it left them just far enough away that I could reset up the traps. I dispersed these spike walls a little bit more, I put down some more bear traps, and I noticed that more Nanooks are spawning further out closer to the waterfall. 3 are out right now, but that's fine because the one that I want is the one that's close and the other ones are far enough away they're not gonna bother me. So it is time for round 2. I use my bow and I pull Nanook. Nanook decides to go to the left this time instead of the right. I do get some hits in with the ballista, only for him to just suddenly start ignoring me, which was kind of annoying. But eventually his attention did turn back on me, and then he veered right to the left, bypassing all of the bear traps, at least most of them, and then soon enough, when he gets out of that bear trap, he bypasses the metal spikes that I had put down, going right up the wall again. This was crazy. I did not expect this to happen a second time, especially after altering my first iteration of this little setup. So it is back to the drawing board and trying again for a third time, if I can get away, that is. Luckily the deer is fast enough that I can run away, and Nanook does get stuck in a bear trap, which helps me to escape. So I edited this part out, but I did end up going back home to make a ton more bear traps, as you see here, and a lot more spike traps. I wrapped it completely around the cliffside, hoping this time it would stop Nanook from running up the wall. I even made a bit of a hook and ran it right up the wall, making it very steep. So hopefully this would stop him. Unfortunately, it did not. You'll see in a second here, but I go to pull Nanook one more time in hopes that this will finally be the battle that I was looking for. Of course, granted, I don't pull the other 3 to 4 Nanooks running around the ice caps. It is time for round 3. It takes me quite a while in order to pull him. Now, I edit all of that out so you don't see it, but it took me about, I'd say 3 to 5 minutes of shooting my arrow blindly trying to pull Nanook. Eventually, I do land a hit, which catches his attention. He comes straight for me, exactly what I wanted. He gets caught in a bear trap, and I load him up full of the ballista spikes, and then I see him veer off and head up the mountain. Oh no, not again. Not after I put all of those spike walls down. Sure enough, he fucking did not care and went over them. So I quickly got on my mount and ran away a third time. But instead of actually running away, I thought, what if I just kite him? I noticed that he gets stuck on one of the bear traps as I turn around, and I start loading him up full of arrows. As he starts to chase me, I would run and start to kite him, just like I would if I was on my wolf mount. Now, I didn't bring my wolf mount this time around. I thought it would be cooler to bring the deer, and I thought the deer would be fast enough, which it is just fast enough to kind of outrun Nanook, but it's not fast enough to really kite him, as the moment I start to get enough distance, I turn around to shoot an arrow, and Nanook catches right back up to me. So yeah, back to the drawing board. After 3 attempts, fully broken armor, I've ran out of arrows, and a lot of my metal spikes and bear traps are pretty much gone, so I'm gonna have to rebuild and try again later. For now, I take a break and I head back to the plains, where I try my hand at taming a Gargantodontosauros. Now, these are relatively new to Ark, so I have actually never tamed one before. This is my first time attempting it. Now, I read up on it and I decided to try it, though my method, as you see here, was not the optimal one, so it didn't work. How it works is that you have to offer food to the Carcosaurus, and when you do, he will start to slowly build up a bar. When that bar is full, he will let you ride him, and that is when the taming process will happen. Now, that little bar that I mentioned will go up based on what you feed him. So I tried feeding him raptors and even the Phiomias, something big and heavy, at least as much as I could carry, but they were were not enough for him. I found a way to cheat the system though, by killing a baby Diplodocus. A Diplodocus is a very high-leveled creature in terms of stats, so it would definitely fill up the bar faster, and with the baby, it was easy enough for me to carry because I can't carry a full-grown adult. Sure enough, it worked, and the Carco was letting me ride it. Now is when the taming process happens. You have a short amount of time to eat as many creatures as you can. This is what's going to fill up the taming bar, but if you are hit, the taming bar will be reduced, so it's best to go after herbivores that won't fight back. Luckily in the plains, there are tons of parasaurs, horses, and other creatures that you could prey on. It took a few minutes, but eventually I do tame the Carco. I thought this would be an excellent tame in order to take on bosses. It has so much health, it would be a great tank. Unfortunately, this is not really the best one for a solo or at least one-on-one fight against a world boss. Now, if it was the spider boss or some sort of boss that would have, little tames next to it, little add-ons next to it, then it would be perfect. But unfortunately, that's not how it works. With the Carco, he has the weakest amount of attack. Now, when you kill and eat little things, he gets a buff that stacks and makes him stronger. Eventually, it could make him stronger than a Giga, but again, that's not going to work for a one-on-one, only with maybe like the spider boss. And here's the crazy part, shortly after taming him, I found an ascended saddle for him in a red beacon. That was crazy, but anyway, it was time to move on to the aquatic areas. So, there are 2 boss battles left that are water creatures. Before I could take them on, I decided to head out deep into the ocean and tame more dinos. I start off with a few more turtles, and then I see those fish guys from Ark Editions. I actually do not know how to pronounce their names, but holy crap, the moment they start charging you is the scariest thing I think I have ever seen in this game. Look at how he charges you with his maw right open. He grabs you, he thrashes you around in the water. I had no idea what the hell was going on. I was definitely taking damage as my armor was breaking, but I was still able to shoot my crossbow, which eventually did drop him down. The other 2 didn't grab me like the first one did, which allowed me to get some shots in and also take them down. I eventually tamed all 3 of them, and they joined my party. I did also at the same time tame a few more turtles, as I mentioned before, and I go to tame a Baleosaurus. Don't ask why I tame a Baleosaurus, I just wanted one, and there was at least 2 of them there, so I thought, why not? Now, this whole segment took me about hour and a half, and all the while, I was getting the freezing debuff, which meant I had to keep eating because I kept starving. So, just off the shore there where you see me, I set up a small little camp with a campfire. You're not going to see it in the edited footage because it's kind of boring. I just start up a campfire, cook some food, and it starts cooking for me while I continue to tame more creatures. Now, as I go a little bit further out with my brand new tames, I start to hear boss music. I open the map and realize I'm not near the Black Demon, which will be the next boss we fight, but I see in front of me a white Baleosaur. Now, the spyglass will say Baleosaur when you zoom in on it, but do you see the scarring there? That's because it's not just any Baleo, it's actually a world boss. This is Maelstrom. For some reason, the name does not show up, but it is in fact a world boss, and it is the easiest one in the map. Why do I say that? Well, because it is a Baleosaur, and they will not fight back. So, you can have all of your tames rush in and take a chomp out of it, and none of them will be hurt while doing it. This will be an excellent way of grinding up levels if you need to do so, as again, none of your creatures are going to die like all of the other bosses. But anyway, I kill Maelstrom, no problem. I see that the trophy is in my bag, and it is time to head home. Now, I don't know if this is just a me problem or a map problem, but I've noticed, even since the start of my playthrough, that Mosasaur don't move. They seem to all be stuck, and it's not just this one that you see on the screen here. It is every single Mosasaur I have found. They have all just, sat there. they don't move. Even if you hit them, you can get up close, and unless you get really close, they can't hit you. So I figured, you know what, there's one right there, why the hell not? I knock him out and I tame him. Now then, on the way home, there is another boss fight, which is, as I mentioned before, the Black Demon. The Black Demon is a large shark that is all scarred down the middle. It kind of reminds you of Jaws a little bit. Now, he does have multiple spawning in the wide ocean. This one is the closest one to my base in this giant gorge. Luckily, in order to bypass him, you can just be on the surface, and he's not high enough to, aggro to you. You have to really swim down into the gorge in order to even start hearing his boss music. But eventually I see him, and I rush in with all of my aquatic tames. This is the final boss to fight, at least for the underwater zones. After that, that's it for the underwater, and it's just the few that are on land until I beat this map. Now, the great thing about the Black Demon is that even though he hits like an absolute truck, he can only hit what is directly in front of him, and he has a very slow turning radius, which means he's not going to do nearly as much AoE damage or cleave damage as the other bosses. So your tames can easily swim around him and get him from behind. I do see a shark die there, and for a moment I thought it was mine. Luckily it was just another one that kind of added on to the boss fight, but eventually he does go down. It takes several minutes, about 2 minutes if I timed it roughly, but that means I have finally finished and conquered the ocean, which leaves only about 3 more bosses left on the land in order to finally beat this map. Once I headed home, I start setting up all the trophies. Now, the Maelstrom one, I did not know what to do with it, as it's a half mount, as you see there. I tried different areas to see how it would look. Eventually, I settled for the middle of my hut, kind of where it turned in. It looks really good there, especially next to Goliath. I put the Black Death up on the iceberg, kind of near where the bear was as well. And something that is different from the last time I played is now all of the various trophies or artifacts are now being dropped by the world bosses. At first they only dropped blueprints, so the first 3 bosses I killed only gave me blueprints, but now they are dropping actual artifacts. Anyway, while I was taking a break from hunting down the giant world bosses, I decided to look for some honey out in the redwoods area, where I stumbled upon a cave. Now, I had brought one of my bears with me as a mount in order to, traverse easier, and also to protect myself from the bees should I find any. Now, this cave I thought would be a small little crystal cave like the one I had found a couple of episodes ago. Unfortunately for me, this ended up being a full-blown cave, one that I'm going to have to explore later, as once I use my spyglass to take a peek down there, I see tons of the cave spawns, from the scorpions to the spiders, even the centipedes. So yeah, that's gonna have to be an exploration date for later. A few hours of gameplay later, I had a great idea. I put down a war map to see if it would show the Appalachian map, and it does. It used to not do that. It would only show like the island, but now it actually shows what map you're on. So what I do is I take some red paint and I circle everywhere that a world boss would spawn, putting an X through the ones that I had defeated, which shows that I have 3 left. I still have the Thunderbird, I have the Mammoth, which you'll see pretty soon here, and I have Nanoh. But speaking of the Mammoth boss, I head out to the tundra area to look for some more tames. After all, I am down a few from the last episode. I see a couple of rhinos that would be perfect, but as I approach it, I hear boss music. This is strange. I've been out here several times already, and I have never heard boss music until now. I pull up my spyglass and I see it, the world boss Mammoth. I do not know how to pronounce its name, so apologies for that, but I knew because it was a mammoth, it should not attack me theoretically if I run up to it unless I hit it first. I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to see how much health it actually has by using a spyglass, and holy fucking shit. Yeah, this thing has over 1 million health. No wonder it takes so much damage in order to kill these bosses. Now, the mammoth itself has about 1 million. The other bosses can have 1 million, but they might have around 600,000. It really depends on what you're fighting. But what is even more surprising is that I find a Yutyrannus. This is the first Yutyrannus I have seen on this entire playthrough. I thought that they didn't even spawn on this map. That's how much I have been exploring and have not seen any. This is crazy. So I thought, because it is so rare, I have to tame it. I try to tame it on mounted back like I normally do, but it didn't work as it only feared my creature. My creature then led the Yutyrannus to the newly tamed woolly rhino, which then proceeded to kill it, and that's kind of unfortunate. But it was time now for the finale of this episode, which is taking down Nanoh. Now, this little area 3 times in a row has failed me, which means I need to pack up and try a different area. Luckily, right across the way was another rocky outcrop that would be perfect. I slowly start moving everything over. Luckily, Nanoh is nowhere to be found, at least in that immediate area, because further down the way, there are 5 of them. You see 4 of them there, one of them is a bit off screen, but there are 5 Nanohs. So yeah, I am not going to be setting up here. I'm going to be setting up closer to where you kind of saw that green beacon, but closer to the rocks. It took me a while, but I eventually did set up. Now, this is a smaller area, so I was able to condense all of those traps and walls that I had been building from the last 3 attempts. And it was time to try again. Now, this time, things are going to be a little bit different. Not only because of a different setup, but I also have the Aquaria so I can climb up high if I need to. That is how I got up here. This is high enough that Nanoh should not feasibly be able to climb up unless it's just hacking the game. I will also be utilizing my crossbow. I try not to use it often unless I'm just taming something, but I will be using it for fire arrows this time around, and a compound bow, which I found in a beacon not too long ago. I didn't want to use it because I felt it was a little bit too modern, but then I said, what the hell, it's still a bow, so it's gonna count toward my primitive playthrough, as it is not a gun, which is the rule of my playthrough, is to not use guns. So I didn't make it using a fabricator. It is fair game. I used a couple of metal arrows that I found, but I primarily would be using stone arrows as that's the only ones I can create myself. The metal arrows are what little I found off of beacons. I have a ton of the spear bolts that I made myself, and the fire arrows, while you cannot naturally make propellant because some of the materials are missing off the map, propellant can be found in the beacons, so I was still able to make the fire arrows, though only a limited amount, so I'm going to have to sparingly use them. Now, I had to keep only a little bit on me because this stuff does get quite heavy. I put some of it in the chest on the platform behind me, so if I did run out, I can quickly grab more and keep firing at Nanoh. So the method this time is that when he runs up, he would get caught in the bear trap, which I would load him up with the spear bolts. As he would run away, I would chase him on the Aquaria and start to kite him. Of course, this would not last forever, as the Aquaria eventually does run out of stamina. I would wait until he gets low and use what little is left to climb up on the rocks, where I would continue using the ballista again. I basically rinsed and repeated this method for about 10 to 15 minutes. Nanoh has a ton of health. You would think that the ballista bolt would take him out relatively quick because you could take out a T-Rex in just a few hits of the ballista. No, Nanoh took like 10s, 20, 30 more spear bolts plus metal arrows from a yellow quality compound bow and being on fire. And sometimes when I ran out of bows while kiting him, I would have to bite him a couple of times with the Aquaria, who already has a boosted melee attack. So yeah, this is, I think, one of, if not the hardest boss on the map. I was starting to get very fatigued while fighting him, not just in the game, but in person. Again, this took like 15 minutes of just rinse and repeat. Climbing up, hitting him with the bowl, jumping down, hitting him with the arrow. It was getting tiresome, and I thought, why will he not die? Eventually, as I'm running really low on arrows, I take a couple of last-minute bites with the Thiocoleo, and he finally goes down. For a second, I thought he turned around, so I went to run around again for him to chase me and kite him more. But then I realized, wait, he's not chasing me. He's finally dead. Holy crap. It took so long, so many attempts, but I finally took down Nanoh without losing a single tame, at least for the last 3 rounds. So, yeah, it was terrible. I absolutely hated this boss and was praising whatever nature god on this map that I finally defeated Nanoh, with the help of Leo here, who did take a little bit of damage in the fight. Now that Nanoh is dead, we have 3 bosses left. Well, really 2, but I'm gonna be fighting 3. And the reason is, one boss I killed, but the footage got corrupted, so I'm gonna have to fight them again. But one of the bosses that I have not defeated yet is Mothman. Now, Mothman, at first, I had no idea where he spawned. I found out he has a rare chance of spawning at any of the abandoned villages, which many of we found during this series, especially in the first couple of episodes when I was doing a lot of exploring. Well, this one here is probably the closest to my base. It's a bit far off, but it sure enough had a Mothman spawn, and it turns out he is actually aggressive and will attack you. He is fast as fuck, so I quickly got into a building, hopefully to hide from him. Luckily, he cannot go into the buildings because the entrance is very small, and of course my guy is really large, so I don't even know how he fits. But the one that got corrupted footage is this one right here, the mammoth boss. I believe it's called Yakawi. Regardless, I did manage to defeat him to the loss of many of my dinos, and that's why I'm gonna have to do something different in order to re-fight him and re-record it. But for right now, we're gonna save that for later. I went ahead and I put a platform saddle, which by the way I found on a beacon. I did not craft it, I don't have a fabricator, but I found one and I put it on my Mosasaur that I tamed, and I hopped onto my Thylaco and I got a ride all the way to the desert. Why are we going to the desert? Well, for one, we need to find out where the Thunderbird is, which is one of the last ones that we need to defeat, and also there's the entrance to the spirit world in the desert. Now, I kept hearing people in the Discord kept talking about spirit world. Eventually somebody said that the entrance is on the northern end of the desert. The reason I have the Thylacoleo is so I could do that right there and climb up the wall with ease. They are pretty much my favorite transportation mount that's, you know, versatile and could climb up pretty much any surface. Of course the Megalania could do that too, but the Thylacoleo is faster. I eventually find the entrance. It's this cave right here with all the crystals. So I enter forth and I will eventually come across a glowtail. These are one of the few aberration creatures that can spawn in this area coming up, as well as some other unique creatures that you probably won't see on any other map. I would have loved to tame this little glowtail, but I didn't have the method of taming it, so I continued a few more steps where I saw a ghost T-Rex, or a spirit Rex, however you want to say it. Now, if you kill them, you can get a skin to put on your T-Rexes to make them look like that. So, this is the spirit world. I actually find it rather underwhelming because it just feels like a crevice in the desert. It doesn't really feel mystical. If you asked me, I wish there was a lot more aberration placeables like the bioluminescent items, maybe a skybox change, something to make it feel spiritual rather than, like I said before, just a canyon in the middle of the desert that happens to have mushrooms and aberration creatures in it. Though speaking of mushrooms, this is going to be the only area in the map that you can get fungal wood, so a lot of the craftables that require fungal wood, you can get them here, as well as other aberration creatures besides the glow pets. I believe there were also bulb dogs if I remember correctly, and there's also roll rats, as well as snow owls or ghost snow owls as you see right there. Now, this whole area is out of bounds, so there is no map. It is very small, so it's not really that expanse, but you can still get lost if you don't keep track of where you're going. And by the way, as you saw right there, the roll rat does dig up blue crystals, so you can get those if you need them for any reason. Anyway, I made my way back to the desert, and here is one of the larger abandoned camps. Above it is the Thunderbird. The Thunderbird is going to be the last boss that I have to face. I can't face it right now because I don't have my arsenal as well as all of my dinos, and it's gonna be quite a pain in the butt to bring them all here in order to face the Thunderbird, which is why it's gonna be saved for last. Now, there's this little like mine shaft in the town that you can go into, and there's a lot of really cool like crystals that you can find down here. There's also a obelisk summoning pad deeper within, though there's nothing you can really do with it because there's no bosses that you summon from the obelisk. Leaving back out to the town, you do have to be careful because there is a chupacabra spawn out here. So luckily I didn't see it this time around, but I am warning you that it can be there and they do pack a punch. Now then, in order to start getting ready for the Thunderbird fight that I will eventually have to do later on, I do want to tame up some Argentavis so I have something that can fly up and grab it. So right there I have an army of Argentavis. This will also come in handy for the Mothman fight that I do plan on doing this episode. I take them out and I start training them by basically just killing anything in sight. And while I was doing this little training montage, I found a new modded creature. You're gonna find a lot of new mods that I've added since the last episode. And this one right here is the Ikran from Avatar. You know, the blue alien Avatar, not Avatar the Last Airbender. Now, for obvious reasons, these are not called the Ikran. They named them the Drakars, or Drakaras. There are a different, varieties of them, and this one in particular is the Arctic one. They do pack a punch, because remember, I have almost all of my stats into melee and my health pool, and it was still hitting me for quite a bit of damage, including all of the bleeding it can do. Once I killed the first one, I got an up-close look at it, and it looks really freaking cool. I might have to tame one of these, but maybe not this playthrough. It'll probably be in Season 2, which I already have planned out once I defeat the Thunderbird. There was a couple other ones in the area, so I take them down. I have my Argentavis nearby, but I didn't know how hard these things hit, and I didn't want my, newly tamed Argies to get killed right away. Now, something I really don't want to do, but I'm gonna do it for only one reason and one reason only, is I'm going to make a Rex army. Now, I'm doing it at this point because I had not made the rule that I cannot do it in this playthrough, but it's because of this is why I made it a rule in my new Ragnarok series that I will not be making a T-Rex army because I think it's a bit cheap. Now, the reason why I'm doing it here, other than the fact that I recorded this before my Ragnarok and you're just now seeing it, is because, as I said before, I lost the footage to the mammoth boss fight, and you saw the head. I clearly killed it, but I want to show you that I took it down. So with the second fight, I just kind of want to get it over with without expending more of the dinos that I still have left over. So, Army of Rexes it is, at least just for now. Besides, we're almost done anyway. And this crossbow that I have, this Ascended crossbow that I found in, I don't remember if it was like a red or a purple, I think it was a red beacon that I found, it knocks out like T-Rexes in a couple of hits. It is amazing. And one of the T-Rexes, as you saw there, had babies, so I got a I got 3 for 1. So after I tamed my T-Rexes and put them back at home, I headed to the swamp. Now, you see me running, I do have my wolf nearby as a getaway mount because the Dinosuchus are no joke. If you mess up taming it, yeah, they can mess up your day. It also doesn't help that the little water scorpions, the Itrupids, I actually do not know how to say their name, but they are everywhere. Since the last time I played, they are in every body of water, including the pond outside of my house, which there never used to be anything there before. And yeah, by the way, I did tame the Dinosuchus after dying once to the water scorpions. I had to run back and claim my body. But as I was saying, the water scorpions are terrible, which is why I'm also taming this Sarco. And by the way, I did get attacked by an American alligator. They're basically baby Dinosuchus, but they're easier to kill and easier to tame if you can tame one, but yeah, I don't really need one, so I just kind of kill it. But yeah, the Sarco is going to have one job and one job only, putting him in my pond to eat those water scorpions because they killed me 3 times. I didn't show the footage because it was kind of sad. Anyway, this is another mod right here, the Tribal Armor set, or Tribal Warrior set is what it's called. This is a paid mod that basically adds skins for your armor and weapons, as well as tools. Now, I don't really like the headpiece, so that's not going to be staying too long, but I do like the pants, boots, and gloves, so I'm going to be using this more often. You've probably already seen it if you're watching my Ragnarok playthrough. And right here is another mod that I installed that adds fantasy creatures. That right there is a goblin, and they do pack a punch. They mostly spawn along the beaches, but I do find them in the tundras as well. They always spawn in packs. Now you can also find orcs, werewolves, and a bunch of other creatures like wargs, and some regular creatures as well, like a type of deer called the elven deer, which has a lot of HP. I don't even know how you can kill one normally. You can find boars as well, which are basically like the Deodons, but not as annoying, though they're still annoying. This one right here is another modded creature. I actually don't know what mod it's from. I just kind of started installing mods randomly, so I don't know what it's from. So after I went on a little bit of an excursion, I decided to do a little bit of role-playing, and I was fishing right there, catching up some of the new fish added from the Appalachian Denizens mod. By the way, since I last played also, a lot of the creatures of the Appalachian Denizens mod have been removed for the sake of it's going to be put into a different mod later on after they've been updated and fixed in various ways. So that's another reason why I am down on a lot of my tames, because they just kind of vanished on me and I don't know who's missing, so unfortunately there's going to be no tombstones for them. Anyway, I set my Sarco up to wander around my pond, and I gathered up my army of T-Rexes, my Argentavis, and some of the other creatures I recently tamed like the Dinosuchus in order to take on Yakawi, or however you pronounce it, the mammoth boss. The mammoth boss pretty much has about 1 million health, which is on the larger side, but it's relative to the other bosses of this map like Nanoh. Now, because I'm not fighting it solo by myself like Nanoh, I've got my army of Rexes. They can take down the mammoth. And here's another thing. So, as I said just now, the mammoth has the same amount of health as Nanoh. However, Nanoh, with almost the same setup, I had at least a couple of Rexes, a couple of Dinotherums, and whatever. He was able to take those out, like the entire army, no problem, because I tried twice and the same thing happened. With the mammoth, I was able to kill it without a lot of casualties this time around, so that tells me that it's easier than the bears. Once the mammoth was down, I grabbed my Argentavis and we headed to Mothman. Now, I just grabbed them for the time being because Mothman is a flyer, so I figured he would be up high and he would need a dino that could reach him, so that was why I brought only the Argentavis. Now, for some reason, only 4 of them, or 3 of them as you see there, are chasing Mothman. One of them got stuck somewhere, so I would have to retrieve them later. But another thing is that they fly up really high, and because Mothman is so fast, I am not really able to land any blows on him. I do land a couple every so often, but it's more luck than anything else. Now, when you do this, if you try to do it this way, that is, make sure your birds or whatever you use are on follow. That way, if they get too far, they can come back to you relatively easy. If they got too far, they would actually de-aggro and come back to me, bringing Mothman closer as well. Or if Mothman de-aggroed, the birds would fly back to me as well, as you see there. Now, this right here was about 20 minutes worth and nothing really happened, so I ended up bringing my Rex army to see if maybe that could help out. And as you see there, they are terrible for leading through the forest. I had to jump off of Gammoth and try to lead these 2 stragglers to the rest of the army. Once I managed to eventually get them there after like a half hour of hassling through the woods with my army, I had to find the Mothmen. Luckily, they didn't go too far, and I managed to poke them to start the battle once again. I quickly ran to my Dinotherium because Mothmen can hurt a lot if I'm not careful. Though something else that I noticed as well is, just like Nanoh and some of the other boss fights, multiple of Mothman spawn. I see 2 on my map, but luckily the male one is a little bit further away. The one that I had engaged with is the female one. That's just something to keep in mind if you do go boss hunting, because this is not the first time it's happened to me. Though with more power than I had before, as the Mothman got close, all of them were able to take a bite, which means I was able to take out Mothman this time around with no casualties. So really the challenge is speed and power rather than defense. But now I have a new trophy that I put in my house. It blocks my map a little bit and it will give me nightmares when I sleep in my bed at night, but it means I only have 1 boss battle left until we've defeated all of the Appalachian map in primitive mode. This is it, the final episode of my primitive playthrough of the Appalachian map in Ark Survival Ascended. The final boss to defeat on this map is the Thunderbird. I had saved him for last because of just how far away he is from my home, also the fact that he flies, so I had to tame up a bunch of flyers. Now, I do want to bring the Rex army. I don't really want to, but I'm going to. Now, this is going to be the biggest pain in the butt because they take so long to travel through the forest because they just keep getting stuck. This is why I head home and I grab my Mosasaur, the same way I brought Leo all the way to the desert in order to get to the spirit world a few episodes back, or was it last episode? I don't remember at this point, but I'm going to have to build on the platform. I'm going to do that when I get closer to where they're at, which is just inside of this inlet. Now, I can't go all the way inside of the inlet because, for obvious reasons, the Mosasaur is just so big, so I drop him off and I run all the way back to pick up my Rex army, as well as the rest of the creatures that are there. Even for this short distance of where they are right now all the way to the shoreline, it's still a hassle. For one, the Dinotherarium gets stuck on all the T-Rexes, and look at that, I couldn't even get out. So I changed my mind and I hopped onto the Dinosuchus, which I named Wraith, and it was much easier to get out of the cluster and start heading down the river. Now, once I do get to the shoreline, the plan is I'm going to be building on top of the platform and make kind of like a box or a boat to hold in all of the creatures. Now, I'm not going to be able to take them all in one go. The raft is able to take a little bit more weight than the Mosasaur, but the Mosasaur is limited by how much weight it is carrying, and that's including creatures on its back and what they're carrying as well. So right there you see me on Gammoth, and I'm taking down some trees just so I can quickly get some wood, fiber, thatch, all that kind of stuff to start building. Now, this is not going to be foolproof because one of the reasons is that the Mosasaur kind of like swerves when it swims, which kind of messes up with the placement of the creatures, as well as the fact that it goes underwater, which can make them fall off easily. And look at this right here. I don't know if this is a bug or what. It's saying that that one spot in particular is too far away from the platform when it's the same distance as everything else. Anyway, that is my proof of concept right there. I load the heaviest creature first to see if the Mosasaur can take it. I checked the weight, and the weight actually says that it can handle it. It can actually handle a few more creatures, so I went back and I got the Terror Bird and the Rhino to load them up as well. That was just enough for them to fit, so I'm gonna have to do multiple trips, which is gonna happen over the course of the next couple of in-game days, because the T-Rexes are like just over half of the weight capacity, so I'm not able to take 2 at a time. I do have to take 1 at a time, but luckily the birds can fly and the Dinosuchus can just swim behind the Mosasaur, so it's not that big of a deal, though it takes even longer than expected because, as I said, it's a lot trickier to move creatures on the Mosasaur because they just simply fall off no matter what you try to do. And you're going to see that right here as I turn around and I notice, oh no, they are way back there. See, the reason is I had to keep looking up. I have to keep my Mosasaur looking up so he doesn't dive down underneath, because that's a guarantee that you lose your dinosaurs in the water. I actually don't know how this happened because I was looking up, I didn't go under, I just kept going straight, and somehow they just kind of fell off anyway. So luckily the ramp is steep enough that I'm able to walk them right back up onto the ramp, though I did it one at a time just to make sure that they didn't cluster and slip off of the ramp, because that can also happen. After dropping them off at the desert, I went back and I started with one of the Rexes. Again, this is going to take several in-game days, which is why it's already into the next day, and the trip is all the way pretty much to the other side of the map, and I have to go around the big island too, because between the island and the mainland, there's just a bridge of sand that the Mosasaur cannot cross. You're gonna see right there where I'm swimming. This is me actually trying to go through that pass, and I end up getting stuck. Now, I cut that out because I was there for like 10 minutes. It was so annoying, and then I had to go around the mountain. So anyway, there is most of the creatures there. I still had like 2 more Rexes that I had to go pick up, plus the RGs, but I stopped because I saw a dog in the water. This is a modded creature, the Dobermann, and it basically uses the Armadoggo model, so that means you do need to have the Armadoggo purchased and able to tame in order to tame the Dobermann. But as I go to try to save it, I wanted to tame it as well. I noticed it was taking damage. I thought something was eating it. No, it just drowned in the water. So I guess it swam out to chase something, and then it just, lost stamina or whatever because it drowned. So I was like, oh, that's too bad. So I decided to pay it a little bit of respect. I dragged it from the water, and I brought it up onto land. This is where I can get a kind of good look at it. When it's not mangled, I could probably get a better look at it. But you can see it's pretty big for a Doberman dog. Anyway, another real life hour or 2 later of me transporting T-Rexes, I finally have the full army here. I hop onto Gammoth and we begin our march toward the town. The town luckily is not too far from the river, and just behind the town is the mountain where the Thunderbird spawns. Now, I do want to place a bed down just in case, because there's no way in hell that I'm going to be running all the way back. I mean, I do have Leo and Timber who are pretty quick to get around the map with, but I would rather not do that. Now, there's no trees in this immediate area, which means I'm going to have to travel quite a bit away to eventually find a tree. So I go ahead, I grab my thatch, I grab my wood. Once I see that I am able to make a bed, I run all the way back, and I place the bed underneath the archway that leads into the village. I feel like that would be good overhead cover. Now then, that I'm all ready, it is time to face the Thunderbird. But there is a problem. First of all, my Argentavis keep getting in front of my face so I can't see anything, so besides that, I noticed that there are multiple Thunderbirds. This is nothing new. As you've seen the rest of the series, there are times where boss battles can multi-spawn in the same area, which can be dangerous. Now, I have not fought the Thunderbird yet. I do not know how strong it is. Will it be as tough as Nanoh? Will it be as tough as Yakawi, or whatever it's pronounced? Or will it be as easy as Maelstrom or even Goliath? I do not know. So I want to only pull one at a time. Luckily, one lands nearby, so I don't have to fly all the way up to try to grab one. I use my bow and arrow to grab its attention. Now, as it's following me, I lead it back while shooting it up with as many metal arrows as I can to kind of get a head start into its HP before I lead it to my pack, where they start to hammer it hard. Now, unfortunately, it does take aggro to one of my birds. So that means while the rest of the pack was able to get some good hits in, it ends up flying up into the air, which means the Argentavis are really the only ones doing damage now. Now, unlike Mothman, it is slow enough that I am actually able to aim and take some hits in with my bow, which is great because now I can help out too. Well, at least for a short amount of time, because at some point I end up running out of arrows. That's including metal and stone arrows. I did have trank arrows, but that's not going to do any damage, and you can't really trank the damn bird anyway. It would have been cool if I could trank the bird, because it would just fall down to the ground, and then I could have the pack take it on. So right now I'm kind of at the mercy of if the Argentavis can kill it or not. I hopped on top of the Dinotherium in order to get some range there, and then I got struck by something from behind. A second Thunderbird had joined the fray. So this was not good, especially because both of them kept staying up into the air. Though with one of them, you can see holes in its wings, which means it's getting close to dying. So I kept shooting at it. Luckily, one got low enough to the ground that you're not going to see it here, but you're going to see it in a second. One did get low enough to the ground that the group was able to pin it down and completely just stomp on it, while the others continue to fight in the air. With the lack of arrows, I switched to my pike. By climbing up high on this little rock here that I'm on, I am able to get in a couple of hits, though they keep going too high for me to reach. Now, something embarrassing is, on one of the rocks that I had climbed on to try to reach up to the birds, I noticed that they were getting too far away. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just go and climb down, only for the fall to be so high that it killed me and I didn't realize it. So good thing I placed that bed down. Also, keep a lookout for droppings that may fall from the sky from the birds that are fighting eternally in the air. Now, right there is where you're going to see one of them had gotten low enough to the ground. See how it's completely pinned and being pounded on? Yeah, you came to the wrong neighborhood, Thunderbird. That one goes down pretty quick, and I do notice that the other one that was up in the air also eventually goes down. Now, I don't know who got the killing blow, so this is now where I go around to check all of my T-Rex to see who got the killing blow, because whoever did would have all of the supplies on them. So that one didn't get it, so I go and check the next one, and yep, there it is. All of that cementing paste, organic polymer, this is the one that definitely got the kill. Now I just need to find the trophy, and I'm going to be heading home. Now, not everyone does come home. I leave the Rexes and the RGs there. I do bring home Gammoth and Wraith and a few others, but yeah, I just did not want to take all that time to bring them all home, so I just brought back who I really cared about, which is not the Rex army, and I set them up because now it is time for a rest. That is it. Our journey is over. The adventure is done. We have conquered all of Appalachia, all of its Denizens, all of the boss battles, trophies, everything. And I thank you for watching this entire series. We are going to be starting a Season 2 relatively soon, because an entire eastern half of the map, well really third of the map, has been added with an additional boss. Now, I don't want to add it into this one. I want to do something completely different, and that's including starting over. So I hope you stay tuned, subscribe, like this video, so you could watch this second season when it does come out. Make sure you also check out my Ragnarok series, where I'm playing it kind of the same way with the same primitive playthrough. Now, I do want to give an encore, and I want to honor all of the fallen soldiers, dinosaurs that we have lost through this journey, as well as showcase off all of the boss battles. But before we do that, I hop onto Dave, because I still need to set up the Thunderbird trophy. It takes quite a while to finagle him to get the right way in order to set up the new trophy. Now, his trophy is meant to go on a big wide wall. I don't have that, I have a rock. So I place some pillars to make it look like it's being propped up in the position that it is. So it looks a little bit better from a roleplay perspective, and that's it. This is the end.